And I'm live, I think. A couple minutes early again. That's my little tradition, be a little early, just so we can wait a few minutes for the other people to come in. Hi again, for those who are tuning in. I'll say another hello in a few minutes during the intro, but just wanted to dial in YouTube. Still getting used to the stream, so I want to make sure that the stream health stays okay and everything works. Looks to be working. Looks like we got a couple viewers. It says 1 and 3 in the same place, so I don't know what number to trust there, but hello to all 1 or 3 of you. Or I can add them together. Maybe there's 4. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I posted in a few places that be doing another stream, and this is the number 2. Doing them weekly now. That's been the plan. So I did some research in between, studying, and just to make sure we're giving some good advice. You know, I don't want to give the worst advice, but it's not all going to be perfect. I mean, things change all the time, and sometimes you're using the examples that are the best, and they're actually wrong as well, and then you kind of have to figure it out yourself. And we'll get into a bit of that because there's some examples that I used where they weren't really adequate, and I'd like to go through the process actually of showing you guys how I find an example and then kind of turn that into my own thing. So it's not quite copy paste, but similar to it, I guess. Kind of like treasure hunting a little bit. Got my fuel again here, the Red Bull Blue. You guys notice it's the smaller one this time. Ended up staying up pretty late last night, or last week when I did that and had the full one. The 9 p.m. Red Bull is tricky, so it's always a risk. But yeah, I've got some notes for us prepared and everything, and I'm looking forward to the stream. Really excited, actually. I'm excited for stream 20. You know, I wanna get deep into it already and really have a community behind it, or just to be able to ask the community certain questions like, what's the next program we want to work on, or let's work on a theme together, that kind of thing. So in a way, we want to get some of the setup out of the way. We need to get the components made, but that's going to be fun too. So it's going to be fun the whole way around, I think. I guess we'll see. And please feel free to post in the chat. Always here to answer questions. I take a peek at it every second or two. Not quite that often, but yeah. Looks like we're just about... Oh, it's 9 o'clock. So, hey, the stream's officially started. We're here. Hi, I'm Dustin Brett. I'll be your streamcaster today, whatever you want to call it. And we're on episode 2 of rebuilding my project, Project X. And I'll show you guys a peek about it and everything. And yeah, let's just get right into it. So I got some notes here that we're gonna go through, and I'm just gonna jump over to the browser here and show you again. So just in case you don't remember, this is me, Dustin Brett. I had my little activity here. My avatar is kind of covering it, but there's some green spots now where we're starting to add stuff every week. Here's the project that we're adding to. I'll just give everybody a little reminder of what it looks like. It's essentially an operating system, desktop environment, whatever you want to call it. Probably closer to a desktop environment for sure, but that's what we're trying to do here. And we're very early days right now. We're at Hello World days, so it's going to be a journey. I don't know what episode it'll look like that, but I know we'll get there, you know? So you just got to bear with me. So here's on the project here. I'm going to switch over to the branch that we've been doing our work on. And just for everyone joining too, feel free to put any questions in the chat, anything you want to talk about, any topics, that kind of thing. Stream notes are going to be in the YouTube description after this, so any links that I mention, you'll be able to find them there. And I wanted to say thank you too for all the support that I've gotten recently since posting the stream. And I did another video, kind of how becoming a developer kind of thing, my story for becoming a developer, and I've had nothing but good feedback, so constructive feedback if nothing else. So I'm really appreciative of that, and thank you. So yeah, let's look at it here. So we got our commits, and let's get into the recap here. So let's start from the start. So we did our initial commit. What was our initial commit, just to remember, right? Just the license, just a repo, setting up a repo. We added Next.js. We just did the next init command, I believe. Added some basic stuff and whittled it down to just the absolute basics to start it off. We got React strict mode. We want to have it be as strict as possible. We got our editor config. That's for making sure that things stay formatted the way we want, hopefully, ideally, if everybody's editing files the correct way. We added Sass support. That's the different version of CSS. That's CSS on, what do they call it? CSS on steroids? I forgot what they call it now. They had a cool name for it. CSS with superpowers. That was it. Yeah, that's a cool one. TypeScript. We added TypeScript. We need our static typing. It's essentially an extended version of JavaScript. There's a lot more to it than that, but it's very helpful. It's going to be useful for us. We added ESLint, a little linting for the JavaScript code. Basically, the linting kind of just helps us make less mistakes and fixes mistakes we made. You see here some little modifications to a file once ESLint said, hey, you should do this, you should do that. So kind of like someone looking over your shoulder, kind of helping you out. What did we do here? We added style lint. Same basic idea, but for the styles, for the CSS. And then we added prettier to do our formatting for us and kind of give us an opinionated way to do all the styling, all the formatting, like the tabs, you put a space here, you put 2 spaces there, that kind of thing, where to put everything. Another very helpful one. And the theme of all of this setup, and the setup that's going to be more today, because that's what we're going to be doing mostly today, just to tell you there is more setup, because it takes a lot of setup, to be honest. And that's kind of, I got my notes here that there's a lot to setting up a front end project in modern web, essentially. I know I got one comment on one of my Reddit posts in regards to the stream where people were joking that it's actually faster to build a real operating system with C to set up a project than it is to set up the project the way we're doing it. And there might be some truth to that, perhaps, because the JavaScript ecosystem is always changing, and it used to be back in the day, you got your JavaScript, you got your HTML, you got your CSS, and there are various versions back in the day. And those versions have evolved a lot since then, new syntax, and we have all this new tooling, TypeScript, the Sass, the linting, the formatting, all of that stuff. But in the end, it allows us to write much more powerful web code, I would say. And that's something that we can get from even just these 2 streams. Even if you didn't make the same project as me, all of what we're doing is to make a very solid front-end template where you can do so much, basically. And you'll see when we get to the end of this setup today that you've got a really powerful little skeleton application that you can build whatever on top of on the front end. And at some point we'll get into the back end, but we're nowhere near there yet, to be honest. So, and just to further highlight what I'm talking about with setup and the front end and complications, there's this cool website here, roadmap.sh, and they have a front end roadmap. Essentially, it's kind of like a what you need to learn if you want to be a front end developer kind of thing. The first stuff here, okay, that's obvious, internet, and then we get to what I was saying: HTML, CSS, JavaScript. That's the basics. That's at the top. And then a lot of what we're getting into, this setting up of the project, it kind of goes over it here for the most part. I mean, we're hosting it on GitHub. We got our GitHub here. Package managers, we're using NPM. CSS architecture, BEM. Yeah, we're probably going to do BEM. I'll get mentioned in that in a different one. I don't want to really talk about that too much. I don't know enough to be like, it's this, it's that. It's an acronym and there's some sense behind it, but I don't want to waste everyone's time with that one. CSS preprocessors, that's where we're going with Sass. Task runners, sure, we got NPM scripts. We've done a few of them for different things already. We got our linters, prettier, ESLint. And the reason I wanted to show this chart too, because first off, it looks like, oh wow, what a labyrinth this is. What a crazy chart. There's so many things to learn. But at the same time, you can see that all of this stuff is kind of in our project. So we're kind of touching a lot of it. Same with Webpack, that's part of Next.js for our module bundling. Pick a framework, yeah, ReactJS, again, that's part of the Next.js framework. As far as Redux, that's a state management system. And React actually has another thing called context, which we're going to get into a little bit at the end of this stream, I believe. And that's what we're going to try to use for now. Redux does offer more, and I keep trying to think, do we need Redux? Don't we? At some point we might, and I think when we do, it doesn't hurt us to have context as a starting point. And I think it'll be a lot easier if we do decide to move to Redux in the future. So I'd like to start simple with context and see if it's inadequate for us at that point. So modern CSS styled components. That's what we're going to get into today. Currently, we're using CSS modules. We're probably going to completely get away from those. We'll see, but I don't know if we'll need any of the CSS files once we move to styled components, along with the global styling. HTML templates. Yeah, that's essentially kind of what we're doing with JSX. I'm not sure. They're talking about web components here. That's not quite what we're working on. We're not really getting into web components yet, to be honest. And then testing your app. We got Jest, we got React testing library. Those are the two things we're going to do today as well. We're going to set those up so we can do testing. And then it gets further into this. Again, TypeScript. We need TypeScript. Progressive web app. We will eventually get into doing a progressive web app, I think, but it's actually quite easy to add it to your project, so we can do it at a different time when it's necessary. Server-side rendering, that's where we get into Next.js again. We're going to be doing that, essentially. GraphQL, that's when we get into the backend, probably. We're not really communicating with any APIs or anything yet. Most of this other stuff we don't need to talk about, but that's the end of the chart for the most part. So you see that there's a lot in our project that's going to be in this chart. So rest assured that you're learning a lot about the front end, seeing these things. And there's this cool website, NPM Trends, where you can kind of see the different trends for different kinds of packages to be like, well, why make one choice over the other? I wouldn't say this is necessarily you're going to be your guiding light, but you can see here that React is quite a bit more popular than the other ones, and you can find the same kind of thing when you go styled components as well. I believe there's a little one here. It suggests, well, I can't find it there. If I close these ones here, it suggests styled components, because there's so many different, there we go. These are all the different kind of competitors to styled components. So many of them: Emotion, JSS. There's a few that aren't even in here, but you see styled components at the top. So we're using some of the more popular ones. So that's another good thing to mention. So I think we've kind of explained why we're doing a lot of setup and everything, and I think we can start diving into writing some code at least. First thing I'd like to get into. So we got a repository. We want to. We're the maintainer of the repository. Maybe we should check for outdated packages. Is one of the things that you do as a maintainer of a repository. And there's a command called npm outdated that we can use, and I'd like to show you it here. I'm going to switch over to the code, my notes here, and we're going to just run that command, npm outdated, and we're going to see, are there any packages since the last time we worked on this that have changed? And you can see that there are some packages that actually could use some updating. We got some of our types packages. For example, here we're using 14.14.19, and we'd like 14.14.20 because that's the latest in this case. So that's one of them, and that's in red. And you see this one here is in yellow because we actually, I'll get to why this one's in yellow in a second. But so we have a bunch of outdated packages. A simple way to update them is actually another npm command that I'll just show you guys here, called npm update. And this is going to update based on the rules that are in your package.json file with what versions you want. This is going to update to those versions. So we'll just run npm update, and typically it's going to try to update those ones in red. Doesn't take too long. I guess it depends how many packages you got. There we go. So we've updated quite a few packages there. And if we run the outdated command again, we'll probably see less packages. There we go. So the only package we see now is next. And why, if we have 10.04, did it not go to 10.05? And we can look at that. If we go to the package.json file where the dependencies are listed, we'll see here that all the dev dependencies have this little up arrow here. And we notice that those aren't present on these three packages. And basically this up arrow says that we are willing to move up to newer versions if they exist when we run the update command, essentially. Whereas without that, we're essentially locked into this version. And I don't think I do have a note of that. Yes, I do. It's part of this thing called the semver, the semantic versioning for Node. And in regards to that, in the advanced range syntax here, you can see that's the different ways that you can define these versions. And you can say, I want, if you put an X there, then you, or is it a wildcard or is it an X? Well, there's a ton of rules here essentially, but the one in our case is this here, this caret range. Allow changes that do not modify the leftmost non-version. Okay, so in other words, we wouldn't want to update to version 11 of Next, I think is kind of what it's getting at there. And you could test that and dive into the details, but I'm just kind of, I believe that's how that is. So in this case, that's okay. In general, I think this is a project that's just not like a big danger scenario in production. So it's okay to say, hey, let's just take the updates. At least the, what do they call this? The up arrow caret range. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. And if something breaks, it's not the end of the world to revert at that point. So let's just say, hey, this can be updated as well. So now if we run npm update, it should update next as well. And we'll see here in a second. Just looking at a comment here from Daniel. PWA stuff could be cool, like seeing if the device has Bluetooth support and enabling your OS to use Bluetooth game controllers. That would be amazing. Yeah. There's a lot of things that would be really cool with PWA actually, and it's something I'd like in the future because then it really feels more like an app, what we're making here, whereas currently it's more of a website. But again, I don't want to get too much into PWA this time because it's a whole other rabbit hole, but it's actually easy enough to add. There's a package called Next PWA, I believe. I'll just quickly show you guys here. Next PWA. And I believe it's a really good package, actually. Yeah, zero config PWA plugin for Next.js. We'll definitely play around with this at some point, but there's very little to get it going. And then you have a lot of access to things such as like Bluetooth and that kind of thing. And you can work a lot more with the device, essentially. Or at least, yeah. We'll get into it more. I don't have much prepared, so I don't want to speak out of turn on it. But it's definitely cool, and thank you, Daniel, for your enthusiasm. And we're absolutely going to get into that, possibly sooner rather than later. I'm thinking once we get some of this setup stuff out of the way, and we get to the point where it's like we can make any component. What component do you guys want to make next? What this do you want to do next? At that point, I'd like to start doing more polling and asking questions and getting the audience involved. Because we don't have to do any one thing, but we do need to set things up. So for this stream and the last one, we're mostly doing a lot of setup. So where was I here? Okay, so we're updated. I ran next and I didn't tell you guys. Yeah, so it worked. If we run the outdated command again here, we will see that there is nothing outdated. Great. So now we have updated packages. What do we do with that? Well, we want to commit those changes because we don't want that to be part of another commit that's unrelated. So, okay, those are good changes. We're going to say updated packages. And we could mention that we also did increase this versioning, but I don't think that's too relevant. So I'm just going to say updated packages for now. And there we go. We got our first commit of the stream, and we've updated the packages. So now we can move on to some other setup that I wanted to do. Before we start adding things, there were two things I wanted to add to what we did last time. In regards to ESLint and StyleLint, there were a few rules where I've been humming and hawing about them, and I've decided that, you know what, let's add them. So there's some that some would say are extreme, but my mentality behind them, I'm just going to switch to one here then. So the first one is ESLint max lines, and essentially with Prettier, we already have a max length of a line is 80 characters, and the mentality there, I believe, is readability. In that anything over 80 characters, you're kind of stretching off the screen or you're going to wrap it, and it just hurts your ability to read it, kind of. And under that same mentality, I am attempting to do 80 by 80. In other words, 80 lines as well. And in my past project, there are files that are more than 80 lines, but not a lot of them, though, to be honest. And I know it's a bit artificial at the same time, but I'm thinking that this will help me want to refactor. You know, it'll help keep files in check and not get out of control. And if we have to tweak the rule here and there, just in between streams, we might. But I'd like to throw it in there because it's an aspirational rule for now, that I'd like to just have files not be longer than 80 lines, because you start adding complexity, and then at the same time where it goes off the screen here, it also goes off the screen there. And I feel like sometimes even scrolling up and down, I lose context, or I kind of I don't like scrolling up and down, to be honest. If I can just see it all in front of me, I'm a happy camper. So I'm going to take this max lines rule. It's saying right now error at 2, if we see, as an example, and I'm going to not use that example. I'm going to take the ESLint file. I'm going to close this terminal. We don't need this right now. Go into my rules here, and alphabetically I'm going to add that rule. What was it? Max. So LMNOPQR. So it's going to be above that. And this is in a JSON format, so we're going to have to also put quotes on our key here. And we do want an error, indeed, but we want it to be at 80 lines, same as Prettier. So there we go, we've added that. And we could do a lint command here just to make sure that we don't have any files already breaking that rule that we've added. I would think not. Okay, good, we don't. So we can move on to what the next... So yeah, that was the rule I wanted. There's the mentality behind it. And another one I wanted to add here, I think I'd mentioned this to you guys last stream in regards to, which document was it? This document here, where I was saying how I wanted these imports to be here, these imports to be there, and I blah, 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 just telling you the rules that I thought were right. And, you know, starting to rethink it, I've decided who am I to say what the formatting rules should be? And I think we should just use something like this, to be honest. ESLint plugin, simple import sort. Essentially, it does that. It just sorts the imports for us. And I would rather have that and have its opinions than try to set my own opinions, to be honest. So I think we're just going to be happier with that. And I'm going to install that right now. Switch back to my code here. Paste this in. That's the command. It's the save dev command. You see they've also added ESLint here. So they want you to, it says install ESLint and install the plugin. We know we have ESLint, so I'm not going to do that. It wouldn't affect anything having that there, but I'm just being, just saves us the CPU cycles, you know. So run that. There we go. That is installed. And now if we look back at the instructions here after installation, we have to add it to the plugins. So we'll do that next. Simple enough. Let me just open just the file, not the changes. And if we go to plugins here, so it's here. I think this at should probably be here if we're talking alphabetical. I'm not happy with this alphabetization right now. I'm going to PQRS. So the S comes after the R. And this goes here. And it seems silly sometimes, this alphabetizing, but at the same time, if you're looking for something, let's say I wanted to know if I imported simple. If I just start here, okay, I can know that it's not going to just be randomly somewhere. It's going to be alphabetically where you would expect it to be, at least. Hopefully. With only 3 items, it's kind of trivial, but it can get kind of large. I mean, even this one here. Although at the same time, actually, this is another thing I wanted to add an addendum to, is I figured out recently that the order of these, I believe, matters, and that they kind of overwrite each other. So alphabetize this at your own risk. I think I alphabetized this, and I'm happy with the way the rules are working right now, but it's really hard to say what rules are overriding what rules. So that's a tricky one, and I saw some extensions, they say specifically this has to be at the end, you know? So you got to watch out for that. So those are the 2 ESLint changes I want to do. Oh, wait, no, back to installation. Not done yet. Don't skip ahead, Dustin. So in this case, that's not enough because we don't have anything extending the rules to enable these new rules. So because they don't have an extension, they just suggest, hey, just specify these 2 rules. Then add the rules. Okay, so this is exactly the rules we want. We switch back to these. We find the rules there, LMNO PQR. We want them right there. And they've actually got these out of order here. We want the imports before the exports if we're talking alphabetical. And there we go. So we got the two rules there. And if we go to that file now, there's a chance we already broke the rules. Let's see, is it complaining? It doesn't seem to be complaining, so it's possible I have this in a good order. Let's test if this ESLint rule worked by moving this out of order. So now I got that there, and you see we got a lot of squiggly line complaints. And you see run autofix to sort these imports, exclamation mark. And something nice with VS Code, you can just go right into here and go quick fix, and you can say fix this. And it fixes it right back to the way I had it, which is great. So in this case, that order is actually exactly the way I want it. Sometimes it probably won't be the way that I suggested in the last video that I'd like it, but I'm happy that there's an opinion. It doesn't need to be mine. So that's it for that. Let's just double check again because there actually is a little bit more. This part here, it's saying you can turn off other types of sorts and imports. I don't think we have any other ones, and I don't see a need to do that at the moment. And that's essentially it. So now we are legitimately done with that part. And then the other, just a little addendum, was for style end. And this was another thing where I was wrong. There's going to be a lot of that in general throughout these streams where I'm wrong. So just got to keep an eye out for that. So essentially, style end config Sass guidelines is exactly what I wanted last time when I was, let me just show you guys here. Show you my old code and the mistake that I made. If we look in my style int rules, I haven't added this to our redo yet, but I was saying here that I had no way to deal with include, mix in, these at rules that were coming in because of Sass. And I didn't know how style int could handle Sass. And I don't know how I missed this, is more what I don't know, because this is exactly what I want. And more, actually, because my past project had something called CSS comb, something I was not going to add this time, just because I had a big boilerplate file that I wasn't really happy with for it. But essentially, I had CSS comb just to kind of sort the properties order. And another great thing with this Sass guidelines, if you look here at what it includes, it actually includes something called style int order and style int SCSS. So essentially the two things I want, to be able to organize my styles, the items, and I want to be able to properly lint it. So we want that. So let's get that. So again, we see our installation command. We move over to our thing. We open our terminal here in VS Code. And again, we see that they've suggested we install stylelint. We don't need to. And if you see this -d here, that's actually shorthand for this save dev. We'll use save dev just because it looks prettier when you're reading it on a screen for people that don't know these flags. I always prefer those save dev type flags rather than trying to remember, oh, is it uppercase D, lowercase, it's an A, it's an X. That always is difficult for me to remember, so. Okay, so it installed. So we got the Sass guidelines. Let's go back and see what the next step is. Now we need to extend it. That's really easy. So we got an extends here. If we switch back to ours and then we go to our stylelint here. So we've already got an array here. That works perfectly for us. And into that array, we just want to add what it said there, which is the Sass guidelines. So now we have our Sass guidelines. Let's check what else there was for the installation. Extending the config, tweaking the rules. No, we don't really care about that. I'm happy with the rules the way they are. So let's go back to the code and see if that actually added any issues. It might not have, to be honest. Okay, it did. Yeah, and it involves order. So great, this is the kind of thing we want to know about. Let's go to the style and see what the order is that it wanted, because I'm happy to do whatever it wanted. So let's see, we go to the style here. It's going to load stylelint in theory and show us the error. Oh, do I not have stylelint extension installed? Oh, there we do. Computer is slow or something slow there, but there it is anyways. So this is the same error. Order, properties, alphabetical, expected margin to come before padding. So I guess that's alphabetical in this case.
I don't know that.
Sorry, I got my Alexa speaking here. I'm gonna turn it off because when I say the C word, it likes to talk. It's kind of like those Google commercials where they say, "Hey Google," and then everybody that's watching the commercial has their thing trigger, like my phone just triggered right now, actually. So you got to be careful with these words nowadays. I feel bad for someone named Alexa. They must have a hard life now. Anyways, moved margin up like it suggested. So let's save that and let's see if that also resolves our stylelint scan. Very likely that it will because we don't have the squiggly line error, and there we go, it's fixed. So now we have even more strict rules, but these rules are going to allow us to code faster, would be my opinion, because then you don't have to hum and haw about it. You don't have people, if other people want to look at your code, there's always going to be that consistency because it's almost impossible to deviate from it, essentially, once we're done setting up some of the things I want to set up today. You have to fight to deviate from it, essentially. Okay, so there's our addendum. So from now on, everything is going to be fresh now that we talk about. We're talking about new stuff now. And now that we've got these linting rules updated, this is what I wanted. Oh, let's commit. Let's commit. So I could have split this up into stylelint and ESLint rules, I guess. Commits, sorry. But I don't think I will because it's these are just addendums. These are just updates. I'm just going to call these added rules for ESLint and stylelint. There we go. And I'm gonna push that just to get that onto the server, get that out of our way. And yeah, so now we have all these strict rules. Now we want to make sure that someone can't just push code that doesn't follow these rules, which is easy to do because if right now if they're not running the npm scripts to check, and if they don't have the IDE extensions like ESLint and stylelint installed, they're not gonna their IDE, their thing they're editing the code in, is not gonna show them that they're making these mistakes. So what can we do? Well, there's a solution for that, and it's called Husky lint. Well, the software is called lint-staged and Husky, and the concept is called pre-commit hooks. And let's get into some pre-commit hook talk. Ooh, I flipped a couple cameras there. So Husky, what is it? Husky can prevent bad git commit, git push, and more. Woof. Nice. So what is git commit, git push? Those are the command line wordings essentially for when you're pushing the files. I mean, some people never even need to use the command line if you're using something like VS Code where you can do it all through the click of a button. You rarely even need to get into the git CLI, to be honest, but so you might not recognize those even, but you'd hopefully you would. So, okay, so Husky, that's cool. We want to have those pre-commits. And before I do this, before I run an install here, I'm going to just show you guys lint-staged, because actually lint-staged will install Husky for us. So we don't need to worry about that, because lint-staged is essentially it's working with Husky to do what it needs to do. And it's got a pretty cool installer when I actually just tried using it here. So what is lint-staged? Run linters against staged Git files, and don't let poop emoji slip into your code, essentially. So looks like everything's still going good in the stream. If anyone has any issues hearing me or questions, comments, or anything, feel free to tell me. So yeah, why? Linting makes more sense when run before committing your code. There you go. That's all you need to know. Another reason to run it here instead of at the pipeline, because in the past I've actually been running it in the pipeline sometimes, but it's actually a waste of your pipeline resources, to be honest, because why are you even committing these mistakes in the first place? Use your computer, your dev computer's resources to check that the files that you want to send to the server are already clean, because it's less embarrassing for you too. You're not showing people this messy commit. So let's do installation. So we have this npx command, which is kind of like an npm installer, and there's this thing called mrm, which I think is like a install multiple packages kind of thing. It's a cool command, anyways. So let's go into it here and let's just run it. And this is going to install Husky for us as well. And we'll just let it do its thing there. And I did do this throughout this week before the stream, so I do have a little bit of a prepared config that I'll reference and I'll show you guys. We're going to write it from scratch, but I just remember the fine tuning of it was more obvious once I had it all kind of worded. So it's almost installed there. It's running some scripts. It looked through what we have to make the script, and it's done. So let's see what it did. So for some reason it made this for file. I saw this last time. It basically just looks like a history of what happened. We don't need that. I don't see why we need that. I'm getting rid of that right away. So the package.json, that's the meat of what they changed here. So let's see. So they added Husky, they added lint-staged, and they've added configuration into our package.json file to make this work. So that's pretty cool. So we got the Husky, we got the hook, and the hook is basically like, so when something happens, it hooks onto that, I think is the mentality behind that wording. And the hooking, so when your IDE, when you try to commit something, you say, I want to send that to this, well, you don't even say you want to send it to the server. You're essentially saying, I want to mark this code as ready to be inside my local repository. And this essentially prevents that if it doesn't meet certain rules. The pre-commit rules for that are specified in lint-staged, which is specified here. So you see here, they've detected that I had ESLint, they've detected that I had stylelint, and they've detected that I had prettier. So they've written some stuff here for me. Now I'm gonna go to my pre-can thing. I told you I wouldn't pre-bake anything for you guys, so we're gonna do it, like I said, together, but sometimes these configs, you're just dialing in the most simple things, and I just wanted to show you the conclusions I came to for it, without spoiling too much. So let's just copy that and go back to the code here. And we'll just see what I wrote. So basically, in comparison to what they had here, let's just see. So we can, and why is theirs on one line and mine's not? That doesn't matter. So yeah, I guess I don't need to have these in an array if they're single commands. So I actually prefer that of their original method. But what I have changed here is the extensions that matter, essentially. So what I'm saying is for all files, I want to run prettier. And I'll get rid of the array part here because I don't need to run multiple commands. So for all files, we're running prettier. For files that end in .js, .ts, or .tsx, I want to run this. And the reason why I might have these three types of files, some of the JS files I need for configuration. TS files I might have for utility files, files where I want to write TypeScript, but I don't need the JSX syntax. And the TSX files are when I explicitly want to use the JSX syntax in my TypeScript. So this is essentially, that's all the JavaScript, and that's when I want to run ESLint, is when those change and when those are staged, essentially those files types. And then when do I want to run stylelint? Well, this is getting ahead of ourselves here. For now, we want to run stylelint. The command's solid though. Actually, this command's better for now. So before we move to styled components, we still have our files as CSS. So we haven't got there yet. But remember, we've actually changed our files to SCSS because we're using the Sass preprocessor now. So we want to say SCSS. So if there's any staged SCSS files, we want to run stylelint fix. If there's any JavaScript TypeScript files, ESLint, and for everything we want to run prettier. So pretty close to what they had originally. I'm going to copy again what they had originally just so we can see it side by side. I didn't change too much. Let's just put the order in the order they were that I have them. So it's like prettier ES. Yeah, so one thing here is that they have a cache flag. I didn't like this cache flag because it writes files to your folder to cache stuff. And I mean, you don't need to be caching stuff for this project, I don't think. And they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about caching. I don't like it, you know. Other than that, this is pretty much all the same. They're saying just Java, CSS, and Markdown, but I think Prettier can do more files than that, and I'm happy to run it for everything. Again, the JS, we wanted more because we have TypeScript, and then we are using SCSS. So you can see it's pretty much the same. So we're going to take our commands here, and we're going to use those instead. We don't need our trailing comma. We save that. So there we go. So that's essentially all we need for Husky, Lint, and Staged. And it should be quite simple to test, actually. Let's commit what we have here then, assuming there's no problems. Let's double check the changes one more time. Yeah, okay, very simple. Let's double check lint stage and just make sure, is that really that easy? Because we didn't have to do too much. We got our installation. That's to run it in the command line. Configuration, yeah, we just did that. We kind of worked through that. And this is how I came to my decisions for mine. For what files for what file extensions I wanted, was through looking at this documentation and looking at the examples. I didn't get it from anywhere magic, you see. Okay, so that's honestly it. So yeah, let's go back to the code and commit that. Added Husky and lint staged. Should we say pre-commit hooks? Yeah, why not? Okay, so let's commit that. And you see here how it's taking a second longer. I think that's because it is now doing the pre-commit hooks. And it ran, in this case, it would have run prettier, at least. Probably just prettier, because there were no other changes to the SCSS or anything. So now we've got that change. So let's do a test to make sure that that's working. Let's go to our app file, and let's do something bad here. So it's going to be able to auto-fix this. So if we add that right there, if I were to just run the command, npm, if we look at the command here, by the way, again, what is the command it runs? So it runs this command. If we were to run that command, essentially the same as running this for the script, we'll see here, it's probably going to remove that comma. It did. So now the file has no change. So what we would expect, if we once again break this file and we try to commit this, is that it's not going to allow that because it would fix it, and then there would be nothing worth committing. So let's say testing pre-commit hook. And let's try to commit this and see what happens. And drum roll. Okay, there's a dialog. You guys don't, I'm not sure you see it on my OBS stream here, but it says Husky pre-commit. That's all it says, and it shows an error. And we have some buttons. We have open git log, show command output. Let's open the git log. And there we go. We can see that is not what I cared to see, actually. I wanted the other button. Let's break it again. Let's try to push this again. It's not going to allow us to push this messy code now, which is nice, essentially. So we're going to get a pop-up again. This time, what I wanted to press was show command output. There we go. So here it is. So you can see it did try to run the pre-commit, and it tried to run the tasks that it was expected to. There were no staged SCSS files. There was an opportunity to run prettier, and there was an opportunity to run ESLint. And it did the fix. And then you see here, lint stage prevented an empty git commit. So you see that's because after the fix, there wouldn't have been anything to commit. So there we go. Now we have a way to make sure that people can't commit things to our repository that don't fit within our linting rules, essentially. And one little part of this that's nice and not as nice is that it will just fix things. Certain, like, let's say I did do some code changes, but also some sloppy, some ESLint stuff. It would have fixed the ESLint stuff that it could fix. And if there was nothing else that needed fixing, it would have committed that. And you wouldn't necessarily have known that it had done a few changes to your code unless you go look at the commit. So there is a little bit where it's like, oh, I don't necessarily know if I like that it changed my code. But at the same time, those are the ESLint rules. So it's like, are you going to change it or am I going to change it kind of thing? Because it's getting changed, essentially. Okay, so now we have our lint protection. So let's move on to the next kind of protection, the next kind of checking that's very important, testing. Testing, testing, testing. We need testing. People talk about it all the time. I've written a few tests in my life, not nearly enough, but we're going to try to write more this time. And one of the more popular testing frameworks, if you can call it that, yeah, they're calling it that, is Jest. I believe it's written by Facebook, so it's the same people that are doing React. So for that reason alone, it sounds good. It's got a lot of the same buzzwords we're using. We're using TypeScript, we're using Node, we're using React, we're using Babel. So there you go. So cool, I want this. How do we install this? Now, it's not as straightforward with Next.js. So there's some things that we can do, and it also gets into something I wanted to show you guys anyways, if I haven't already mentioned it. I don't think I have in the streams. But it's something called Next.js examples. And this is something, this is on a Next.js's repository, examples. And they have a lot of really good examples here where they fix these all the time. These are part of their main repository, so they're constantly updating these. And these are examples of how to add things into Next.js that are useful. Now, they don't tell you step-by-step how to do it. And that's where I actually prefer it that way. Like, there's people that are going to see, hey, where's a tutorial that tells me how to do this? And there are some tutorials, and we can go through those too. But I like to see the example and see it working and then kind of pick it apart and just use the parts that I care about. And that's what we're going to try to do today. So the first one that I have is the one that's called with Jest, which you can see right there, but I just had the link. So with Jest, it's called, and I believe that's the only one. I also have another one here too. Oops, clicked the wrong thing there. So I have two examples. I have the with Jest and I have with typelint, ESLint, Jest. Now the reason I care to see both of these is because they're not completely written by the same person anyways. There's commits here from different people. So I'd like to see everyone's approach for how to integrate it. I mean, both of these are considered official, I guess, in that they're in their examples. So let's see what they did. So the first thing is look at the package.json file. What did they have to install? Okay, we got some testing stuff here. We got the testing library React. We got Jest. Okay. And if we go back to the Jest config here, let's look at the installation too, just to see what they suggest. So they say at least installing Jest. Let's start there, right? I don't think we can argue that we're probably going to need that. So that's a dev dependency. We're going to get that one in. And while that's installing, let's just look what else it's suggesting here. It talks about writing a test. We don't necessarily need to get there. Additional configuration here. We want to have it be part of Babel in a way. So we're going to want to use Babel here. Let's look at a tutorial because it'll help. Next.js Jest. I think this might have been the one that I looked at just to get the basic idea. Oh, was this the one? There was one that's extremely simple, actually, that I like. I think it was this medium one, to be honest. It was like 4 little steps. No, it wasn't that one. Let's just check one more. Here it was, yeah. I like this one as a basis. Oh, wait, what happened? Sorry, guys. Hey, we're back. Sorry, guys. I don't know what happened there. Darn it. Hey, I lost my OBS there. So I'm going to have to pick up my browser again here where we left off, which was there. Hopefully you guys can see me okay now. If you want to throw a message in the chat, I disappeared there. But yeah, I seem to be back now. I probably lost a few of my things here. Just trying to figure out what happened. Yeah, maybe it's too hot in my room, probably. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, it's working again now, so yeah, I'm back. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah. Sorry I lost you guys. Hopefully I didn't lose too much. It looks like I saw it freeze. I was just talking about the Jest running command, so I probably did install it fine. Let's go back to looking at the Jest install. Yes, it did finish. Great. The next thing I was talking about was I had found a tutorial that at least tells us a couple of good things, but I wanted to mention one thing first off. A lot of them say to install Babel Jest. And I've actually found that that's not necessary because I looked through Next.js, and once we install the next Babel, once we enable Next Babel, it essentially has Babel Jest with it. So we're not even going to install that, and we're going to see if we don't need it. And first thing we're going to do here, if we're going to go back to how they recommended here for their initial installation, they also suggested we create a script. Yes, test Jest. Now we already have test Jest, I believe. No, we don't. let's do test Jest. We want to add that to our package.json scripts here because we do want to be able to run tests. And remember here we had this previous error on test that wasn't really good for us, where we had it was a reminder so that we know we had to do tests here. Now we can put Jest there. And if we just run that, I have a feeling that won't work at this point. But it's good. I mean, it's going to do something anyway. So it failed. Yeah, there's no patterns. It couldn't find any tests. We don't even have a configuration yet. So now we need a configuration. So let's look back. Let's look at this example that they had suggested just to see. So they also suggested adding a Jest watch command. And watch essentially will continuously run Jest. And as you update tests, as you try to fix things, it'll rerun those tests. We want that to be an option. We want to be able to do that with our script. So we're going to add that as another command, but we're going to call it test watch. So that's another thing we can do now if I save this. So now if we do test watch, you'll see that it'll run Jest. Possibly it might still crash because there's no tests. We'll see here. Okay, yeah, so it does run. And yeah, we don't need any of that, so we're not going to worry about that for now because we don't have a test yet. Need a test. So going back to the code here, what else did they suggest? So we also need to enable Jest and ESLint. Absolutely true. Let's do that. We go back to our ESLint here. We go to our Jest, we add Jest just like it said. Actually, that is not alphabetical. Shame on me. Maybe I need some linting for that almost, but then it gets too hardcore. So we've added Jest. Cool. What's the next step? It's Jest because there's not much. So here's the Babel RC file. Essentially, this is just so that we can enable this next Babel on Next. And we'll do that simple enough. All we have to do is make the file, as it says, babel.rc. And we see here that it's suggesting we add the presets in. And we're going to validate all this with the example. But sometimes these tutorials can be a good starting point, actually. I was kind of just nagging on them a second ago, but they're actually a good start. So that at that point, we have something. We still don't have a test, so this probably still isn't going to do very much if we run it. I think, it's not going to say anything. It needs a test. So, but we have the initial setup there. Now, if we go back to those examples, let's look at that example again. And I just want to double check again what they had. So they have test Jest, just like we have. They got their Jest. They got types Jest. Now that's nice of us to have because we're going to be writing tests with TypeScript probably. So we do want to be able to have the type definitions. So we are going to install those as well. Those are nice to have. And other than that, let's see what we else had for links here. Yeah, I wanted to check here just as a reference, just to show you in regards to why we're doing that Babel file. So you can see here, customizing Babel config. That's essentially where you set that up. And it tells us about the presets that they have. And if we look here, I believe there's a link to the file somewhere here. Right here. You can take a look at the file yourself. And if we search for Jest, so you can see here there already is a thing that can set if it's a test. So this is where that Babel Jest stuff is already working. And if we look at the nest config, we can see they already have, where do these guys got it? They already have Babel Jest somewhere. Here we go. They have Babel Jest. So I'm going to leave that out and we're going to see if it complains, but my expectation is that it won't. Going back to that example, let's see what other files they've used here that we need. So we got the Jest config file. Yes, we're going to need a Jest config file. And I'm going to look at the examples here for the Jest config file. Actually, so let's use their example one, as they've done here. We'll go back to the code and we'll create it. Just running out of room here to make a new file. There we go. We got our Jest config file. And if we look at the code, simple enough. Code there. Quite a bit though, right? I think we want to try to whittle this down. And that's an important thing that I want to do in general. So we see here that it's using Babel Jest to do transformation. Now, as I was saying before, we're going to try to not use Babel Jest. So I'm going to try to not even have transform. And we're going to see if we can still work with TSX files. And if we need it, we'll add it. Here's where things start to I get hesitant. Because let's look at the example for the other example here. With Jest. Because remember, there's two examples that had Jest. Here, they also have a Jest config. And you see that their test pattern for ignore looks much cleaner than this one. That one looks sloppy. So I'm not a huge fan of that one. But I believe we do need something there. Let me double check, though. To be honest, I don't even know if we need this ignore pattern. Let's just start cutting out stuff, and let's just see what we do need in the end. So let's have as little amount as possible. I don't know if we need this module mapper stuff. I don't know. What do we need here? Honestly, we don't need very much of this. Let's look at the pre-configured file I made, because I remember that I pretty much whittled it down to almost nothing. And I think that goes to show you that these examples, sometimes you don't need a lot of it. Oh, that's the old code. So I did a redo episode 2 where I kind of started thinking about it. So you see here what I ended up using in the end is very minor from what they had. So let's go back to the example. Let's not take anything out. And we'll see what I have here in reference. So you see I'm using... I use neither of these, actually. So none of this is needed, really. Yeah, let's look at what this is. Module name mapper. Well, we're going to use styled components, so we don't really need to worry about that, I believe. We're not going to be importing pictures at this point. Maybe later we'll need that. That's for mocking up if you're going to be importing pictures, I believe, or that kind of thing, image files. Watch plugins. I don't have any of these watch plugins. Don't care for them. It's when you're running Jest watch, you can have some more features, essentially. Again, like I said, transform using Babel Jest. I think that's built into Next.js when you use Next Babel. Could be wrong, though. Let's again test this out. These ignore patterns, let's ignore when we need to ignore. And the module file extensions, I mean, that is everything we need right there. Let's just assume that's okay. And the roots directory, I don't think we need that either. Let's get into why. Well, do we need to get into why we needed these? Let's not have the config. Let's make a test file. I'm trying to think of the best way to organically explain all the fighting that I did with Jest to get it to work the way I wanted. So let's open the configuration and show you the config settings that I ended up using. Module directory. The first, no. Sorry, guys. Let's do a test. Let's write a test. I want to have a test. So let's use their example again and see what test they wrote and see their hello world. Because I don't want us to get off track and try to jump ahead. That's one thing, a problem that I have with pre-baking is that I'm wanting to jump ahead because I kind of know the result. But I don't want to do you guys like that, so let's not. So let's see, the with TypeScript ESLint one, it is not really using a hello world example. What was its test looking like? Let's see its test. So it's got a test, it's got pages, it's got index, and it's basically just looking at the text. That's not a bad test. Let's see what the more simple example had. It's also going to have some kind of test. So it's first thing here, we see there's a test folder that it looks in that's formatted that way. So let's make that because we're going to need to put our tests in there. So we make our little test folder like so. Get rid of this config file. Let's not jump ahead, Dustin. We got our test folder. And we're going to check here what tests they had. So they had testing library.js. Okay. Good. This is a good test. Basically, I just want to get some of the wording here so that we have something. This is grabbing the index page, and then it's checking for some text. That's essentially something we can easily replicate. So let's go back into our code here. And I want us to emulate for the tests folder. I want us to emulate the same structure that we have here. Because we're not going to just have pages, we're going to have components, we're going to have other folders. So we're going to make this like the root, and we're going to say pages within tests. And within there, we're going to make our first test, and it's going to be testing the index. And we're going to use this spec file extension along with the TSX file extension because we're writing TSX inside there. So we're going to paste in that example. You see this is the TSX right here, by the way, so that's why we want to have it be TSX. And let's start cleaning up this example to be more like we need it. So we don't need to import React. That's part of Next.js. We got render here. So now we see we're going to need this testing library. So let's import that right away. So that's also going to be part of save dev, most likely. Everything is at this point because we're doing these in the back end. So we're going to add that. And we're going to go to the code and just double check what else they added. because there's one other thing that I think is important here. I believe it's in this here, setup tests. We can, yes, we can extend the way that expect works. And I believe that's what they're doing here. Again, let's not jump ahead though, because I think we're going to run into that and we're going to notice that it happens. And that's the more organic way that I would do this typically. And that's what I'd prefer to try to emulate with you guys. Thank you, Daniel, by the way. Yeah, I realized that I was showing you the wrong window at one point, and I need a better way to be notified of these things, because, yeah, I'm not the best VJ. I'm sorry, guys. I kind of got flustered by that stream freezing earlier. It's unfortunate, and I need a new computer. That's got to be it. Whenever any computer problem happens, I need a new computer is my logic. So anyways, let's keep writing this test. So we want to import the renderer. We just did the installation of this library that we need. It's given a squiggly line, so these are probably out of order. Let's check. Yeah, again, it's complaining about the order. Let's just fix that really quick. Oh, okay, it wanted a new line. Sure, I like that anyways. That's nice. It's complaining here because that is not where we need that to be. If you remember this here, we've removed that by doing the base. If you remember here in our TypeScript config, we've added base URL here, so we can just use an absolute path like that now. And there we go. Why is it squiggly line comparing? So now it's complaining again about that. Okay. It's decided to put them together now that I've removed that. I'm fine with that. That's, hey, however it wants to organize it, fine with me. So our test is starting to look a little cleaner here. Renders deploy link. No, we wanted to say renders the index page. Okay. So what's it doing here? So it's trying to render the index page, and then it's doing a get by text command. That's something specific to this render function, and we'll get further into that whenever we start talking about writing more tests. But that's what this is essentially almost like a hello world example. This is right from the Next.js examples. Next thing here is it's trying to do it's doing link element. I don't like the wording there. Well, I guess that's the element, sure. Oh, okay. It's trying to get the element by some text, I guess. Get by text. So what is the text in our index page so that we know what we're testing? And as we get further into testing, we'll also talk about how these kind of tests aren't ideal. We wouldn't want to be hard coding strings into our tests, because at some point we're going to do internationalization, and we don't even necessarily want to be validating is the text showing, because like that's a high level expectation, I think, and we want to test more relevant things, or else we're just going to waste a ton of time testing. Some of that you can get with snapshot testing, where it's going to render it and then take a snapshot and then make sure that the next time it tests, it's essentially the same. And if it fails, then you know something's changed, and you can either say, okay, that snapshot actually should be updated because it's an expected change, or then you caught an error. So that could be helpful if snapshot changes. But for now, for this simple example for today, we're going to do a hello world example. And we'll get to snapshot examples in the very near future when they make sense. But for hello world, it's not so important. Let's just use this get by text example. So we're going to change the get by text to be hello world, because that, I believe, is the text that we had here, like so. And I'll do the copy paste. As you guys remember, I don't trust myself to type. We're gonna add these semis. I don't know why ESLint's not complaining about that, but I like my lines ending with semicolons. And okay, so we're at the point now. I'm gonna add a new line here. We're at the point now of the expect command. This is where it's saying I expect let's call it the hello world element. Hello world element. I expect the hello world element to be in the document. Okay. To be in the document. Sure, that's fair. Yeah, we want to look for this, and then we expect that it actually is there. So why is to be in the document not working? Property to be in the document does not exist on type Jest matcher shape. Okay. So why is that, do you think? So it's on expect. So we run an expect command, and it returns a Jest matcher shape. Why do we not have this function? Perhaps we want to extend the functionality of expect. And it turns out that's exactly what we want to do. Add the semis here. And if we go back to our example, we'll see that that is essentially what they've done. Oh, I just clicked a stray link again there. Sorry, guys. And I'm still coming through good. Now I've got stream phobia, where I have to keep making sure I'm still live. Okay, so yeah. So if we go into, we see there's something called setup tests. And this is another Jest specific thing. That's an addition that allows us to add setup tests, and it kind of talks about it here and explains it. And we see here, and so we want this file. We want to do some setup to extend the way that expect works. So let's make a setup file. We'll just make a blank one here, the setup file. And maybe in the future, maybe we might want to set up more things. This is essentially things we want to run before we run our tests, just so we have some basic stuff set up. For now, it's very basic. We're just extending the functionality of expect because they did that here, and I like the extension. So we see here, okay, we just have to import this. Okay, great. Let's do that. And we're going to import that like so. And we're going to see that, okay, that probably means we're going to need this, I think. And is it saying that? Unable to resolve path? Yeah, so it doesn't know about this npm package. So let's try to install the npm package, and let's assume it's just this. Because I think that would be the safe assumption. And if you tried some other assumption and it didn't work, you'd eventually come to this conclusion. So let's try it. So again, we're trying to install another piece. And we can also check the package file from that example to see, because maybe I'm completely wrong and maybe it actually is that long name. No, it is. It's like this. Okay, Jest DOM. So we see it there, right? We installed it here. Okay, good. So it's still giving us some squiggly lines here. What's its complaint? Should be listed in the project's dependencies, not dev dependencies. No extraneous dependencies. That's interesting. No extraneous dependencies. I think it's wrong here, but I don't know why it's saying that. Was there an ESLint ignore rule in this file? Be good to know that. Okay, no. Well, they didn't even have ESLint. What about this one where they actually used ESLint? I feel like they didn't even have a setup file, I seem to notice. Oh, I went too far back. Did they even have a setup file? See, these guys don't even have one for their ESLint example with TypeScript. I don't want to ignore that, but I'm not happy about it. Let's take a look at this. So when you get these ESLint rules that don't seem right, sometimes you just got to dig into them. So I'm going to try the very difficult task of copying something from a VS Code tooltip. Actually, I'm just going to click this. It's not going to open where I want it to, so I'm going to have to find the right window, and then I'll get it for you guys. So this is the rule. No extraneous dependencies. Forbid the use of extraneous packages. Forbid the import of external modules that are not declared in the package.json dependencies. But I did declare it. That's interesting. Okay, well, I'm not sure if there's a trick to this. Hey, let's look at the name of this again. Let's search this and see if I'm just installing that wrong before we eventually just ignore that. Let's see here. Custom Jest matchers. Okay. And how do you install this? Installation. Okay, I did exactly that. Usage. Yep, that's exactly in my setup file. Setup files after. Oh, okay. Maybe I just need to declare that it's in my setup file now. Let's see if that's all it is. If that's all it is, that's a very handy error actually for ESLint, and I appreciate that error. So let's see. So now that it's saying we need to set it up, that's where we need a Jest config file. So it's kind of what you see here, what it said. Importing, it's saying in Jest config, add this if you haven't already. So we need to make a Jest config file, and let's do that. So we're making it like so. And we're just going to assume, well, it's JavaScript, so it's not JSON. Let's look at what one of these example files looks like. And I actually have some configuration here. So I'm going to jump to a Jest config setting here. Let's go to the top of this little scroll bar here. Should be an example up here. Yeah, so that's an example file here of what it looks like. And that's extremely simple. We don't want that verbose, I don't think. Maybe we do want verbose, actually. Verbose? No. I think it's already verbose enough, to be honest, so I'm not going to keep that. But now that we have the format of the file, let's add that thing it suggested here, which was... Oh, darn it. I lost the page I was on. There we go. It suggested we install this. So I think that's correct, and I think that actually matches what I had done in my example. Let's double check that too. Is that what I did in my example when I originally worked on it? I think so. Oops. If we check here in Seta, where is it? Jest config. Jest config. Ah, yes. Ah, okay. Here's something that, here's a tricky one. So in those examples, they use something called setup tests, but I noticed while reading the Jest documentation that they actually called it jest.setup.js at one point. I don't know if we can see it in here. It might have been on that other page. If we search for it here. Yeah, you see they essentially use that wording, so I like their naming structure there, so that's what I've used here. So that's what I'm going to use in the code. If we go back to the code here, is, wait a minute. Oh, that's literally what they used as well, actually. Sorry, I'm jumping behind myself here. So we called it setup tests, but they prefer it to be called Jest dash setup. Is it dash? No, it should be a dot. Everybody's got a different name for it. So we're going to use what Jest suggests. This is where it gets into best practices and how hardcore you want to get with it. The best practice for this name, in my opinion, is the one that Jest recommends. So I'm using that. So let's give it that name. And now they go together too, which I like, you know, that's a little nicer. And let's save this to say, hey, this is being used. And now if we go into the setup file, there we go. We lost it. We got rid of the squiggly lines. So those squiggly lines, in a very confusing way, we're saying exactly what we needed to hear, which was that we need to do this. So again, that's ESLint saving us. We didn't even know about that. So we've written a test. Our test now also, the squiggly lines are gone here. So that's working as well. So let's try our test. And here's a little cool shortcut for certain scripts, you can run them with a smaller shortcut. So for example, build, or is it start? Yeah, I think start can be run by npm start. And on the same vein, npm t is essentially runs the test script. So let's just do npm t. Now we have a test. Now we've set up our config. So it's running the test. And drum roll, failure. Okay, so why is there failure? I think that's the other piece of this puzzle here. So we see here, cannot find module pages index. So it's having trouble understanding my base path here if you remember that we added here. So in TypeScript, we have a way to say, hey, always assume it's the root directory to start from. But Jest doesn't know that, unfortunately. But fortunately, it's actually quite easy to add. And that's where we get into the other configuration setting that I did. And if you were trying to hunt for it, I don't know how you would find it necessarily. Let's say module directory. Okay, module directory. Is that even what I called it? An array of directories names to be searched recursively. That sounds like it. Let's double check that is what I used in the end. Module directories. Okay, yeah. So if you were having issues with, what was the error? Anyways, what was the error? Yeah, cannot find module. Yeah, so if I were to Google something like this, I'd probably copy cannot find module, and then I'd put like Jest, maybe put the word TypeScript as well, but you don't need to put that. And sooner or later, you'd end up where I ended up, I think. And as we start getting into components and start playing with stuff more, I'll probably spend streams where I kind of mess around with trying to find this out and looking through it to try to figure it out. But I don't want to bog you down too much with the setup stream where you guys feel like he doesn't even know how to set up Jest. So you see, I kind of half know, half don't, and you see kind of half of how I got there. So let's go to the code here and let's add that line that I've written. So I've done modules directories, and if we read the documentation again for it, so it's an array of places we want to search, and surprisingly easily, all we have to do is add that exact same dot that we added in the other one. And alphabetically, I guess we could add the dot at the start. I don't know if the order matters, but let's say that that's more alphabetical. I'm not sure it is. So now if we try to run our tests, did adding that allow it to know where the path was? Let's see. There we go. We got a passed test. And now to test that our test works, let's go into our code and let's change it. So now we change the index page to say goodbye world, let's say. Goodbye world. It's a much more dark test. We run our test again, and hopefully we get a failure. Another drum roll as always. Okay, test. Boom, we got a failure. And usually we get a pretty decent error. Let's say what it says. See what it says here. Unable to find an element with the text hello world. Okay, and it shows you what text did occur, and we see that goodbye world is what occurred. So very helpful in that case. And if we change the component, that'd be something we'd know. So I'm going to change it back to hello world. I'm going to run my test again to make sure it works. And I think we've probably set up Jest at this point. Yeah, I think so. Let's just as a double checker here, let's check my code and see when I did it in my redo. I want to confirm that I did. Yeah, I set up the Babel preset. I set up Jest here. Ah, yes, we want a lint. We want a lint, and I think I have some commands for that. That's something you want to note too. I mean, it's mostly for setup, but when you add certain packages, certain frameworks, there's an opportunity sometimes that also add some scripts to work with your linting tools or your formatting tools or that kind of thing so that they don't fight with each other. And I believe that's the case here with ESLint. If we look at my other links here, so yes, we find it right here. And this makes sense. We want to be able to lint our tests. So if we see here, we have another plugin for ESLint called ESLint plugin Jest. And it's extremely easy to install. It's another one of these plugins. It looks like it's dev. They're suggesting the yarn command versus npm. I'm not going to do what they want, and I'm just going to type it in here. I'll do save dev, and we'll run the ESLint plugin Jest. And while it's doing that, we're going to see what's required to install. So it looks like it has its own little plugin. We're going to go into the ESLint config file, and we're going to add that to plugins in the right alphabetical location, which is there. We're going to save that. We're going to see what other things we need. Then configure the rules you want to use. Okay. Do I have to? I would prefer if there's an extension here. Let's just see if there's a way to extend this, because I don't want to have to add more rules if I can just extend some better rules. So looking down here, I see, yeah, shareable configs recommended. Here we go. So yeah, so let's do that one. That looks nice. And it looks like it's included with what we already have. So if we go here and we just add another extension, I'm going to keep doing it alphabetical for now until it fights with me. So let's put that here. And there we go. So now ideally we have some linting for our tests. So let's run npm run ESLint and just make sure that our tests pass, because we don't even know. Looks like they do. Good, good. So we got essentially a clean test there, it looks like. Looking back at it, yeah, it looks pretty clean, looks pretty straightforward. Renders index page. Yep. Okay. Was there anything else that we needed to check? Let's just check. Let's just check here, guys. So going back to our Jest plus test. So we added that. We added our test. I think that's everything. So let's review on our code, and let's make a PR. So I'm going to close this to get this out of the way. Close these guys to get these out of our way. And let's see. So we got our Babel file. Yeah, we had to tell Next.js that we want to do some babbling. We've added to our ESLint. We've said Jest is an environment, is part of the environment now. We've added the plugin, the extended rules, Jest rules we allowed along with the plugin itself, which is listed here. And I wonder if this line might be so long now that Prettier is going to change it too, by the way. No, it looks like it's not quite 80 lines yet. We've added a config file with very minimal stuff. We've tried to keep it very minimal. So we've just added that we have that special base path, so we can use the exact same path wording. And we also have our setup file, because we want to extend the expect command, which I almost broke there. We got our lock file as always, and we've got some JSON changes that we did. We added the two tests. We updated the test command to work with Jest, and we also have the watch command. Looking here, we've got our types. So we've added the types Jest. We got our testing library, React. We got our test Jest DOM, the plugin, and Jest itself. So there we go. That's a pretty clean command. Oh, sorry, the test, of course. So let's look over our test one more time. So using the React testing library, we took the render function, we imported the index component, and then we've run the test function here. This is just built into Jest. So you see here, we didn't declare test, it just worked. Same with expect. We've given a name to our test, and then in the test itself, we try to render the index. We have a getByText function from the rendered component where we can search for text within that component. We search for hello world because that's what we expect to see. And the hello world element is expected to be in the document. Great. So very simple test for the most part, I think. Maybe not ideal in some ways, but we're just writing a hello world app right now. So let's do it. Added Jest support, I guess. Put Jest/testing just in case people don't know what Jest is. And let's commit it. And you see it's taking a few seconds longer this time because it's doing some linting. It's probably even it might even do some prettier stuff. You never know. So it's gonna do some formatting there. That's stuff we don't need to run now. So there we go. We got that committed. Let's push that up. And yeah, I think we've done everything for Jest as well now. Now, here's something that I wanted to discuss. Another important thing is that tests are good, but running tests is better. Essentially, what I mean by that is when I was doing this earlier, I got to this step, I made the test, and then I at some point I broke a test, and we're gonna break it, but I didn't know that I broke the test. And the reason I didn't know I broke the test is because I wasn't running the tests at all. And what we want to do is we want to run those tests whenever commits are pushed. And what we don't want to do what we did last time, which is another pre-commit hook. The reason we don't want to do that is because it can get to the point where there's a lot of tests, and you don't want to be running those tests every time you want to do a commit, and you don't even necessarily want to run those tests on your computer anyways. So that's where we want to get into this idea of something called continuous integration, and specifically the testing aspect is what we're going to get into today. And this is pretty new to me as far as an open source project working with this, because I don't have a lot of experience with GitHub Actions, but I've started using them and I'm loving them so far because they're extremely simple. And I'd like to get into it and show you guys. So we got a guy here that wrote a nice little Medium article. Let's take a peek at it just to give him a little credit and get an idea for the gist of it. So add Jest to your CI/CD pipeline with GitHub Actions. That's what we're going to do. So basically, we need a GitHub account. We need to have a GitHub repo. Yeah, I guess we need to have a GitHub account. If we're working with a GitHub repo, we obviously have a GitHub account, I think. But so why do we need a GitHub account? Because these tests are going to be run on GitHub servers. They're actually allowing us to run these for free, which is cool. And let's just look at the reasoning behind that. You see here that they have GitHub pricing, and they actually have free, basic for teams and developers. They have 2,000 actions minutes per month. So essentially our actions can run 2,000 minutes worth of stuff on their servers per month for free, which is great. So how do we do it? So here they're talking about, hey, first you got to set up Jest. You need to make a test. We've already done all that. We have a test command. We've done the test. We know it passes. So we want to make a folder called GitHub. Let's do it. And you can look up a lot of this too. Do I have a link to GitHub Actions itself? Not specifically. Do I? Maybe I do here. Anyways, if you didn't know how to make this folder, it's part of GitHub even to do it. We're not going to do it here because I believe it focuses on the master branch, and we're not using the master branch, so let's not worry about that. Let's just make the folders here, and let's just go through these steps here. So it may make that folder. What's the next folder they wanted? Then within that folder, we're going to have workflows. This is the folder structure that GitHub requires so that it knows these files are going to be here. And then within that, we have a file called main.yml. I believe it doesn't need to be called main, but I checked and GitHub itself does call the first one that you make main. So we're going to use that as a best practice, just to be consistent. Okay, so we got our main YAML file. Now, if we go here, the guy has an example. He's done some stuff. He's got a script here. It's pretty simple. And you see here he's using this checkout v1. Now, I've actually found a more up-to-date script that I would rather we use. So I'm not even going to use this guy's example. And I'm going to show you here a pretty relevant script we can use called, it's on the GitHub marketplace under actions called run Jest. You don't need this action. Why is that? GitHub Actions, why do I not need that action? You don't need this action. I didn't notice that last time. Does he explain why I don't need this action? Hey, this action executes Jest. If anyone knows why I don't need that action, feel free to chime in. But for now, I'm going to add the action. So I like the way they wrote theirs because it's more simplistic. I'm going to show you both, and we can take a quick peek at the syntax as well to try to understand it. So that's one of them. And if we look at the example that the guy had, this is another one. And we're going to essentially do a hybrid. And that's kind of the way I like to work, is to kind of get a few examples and then make a little hybrid that feels the best for me. So let's start at the start. So name. I prefer tests to unit tests because I don't know what kind of test these will be. Maybe there'll be some other kind of non-unit tests. Probably not, but test is generic enough. I'm happy with that. So we'll use that. Now the on command. This is an interesting one, and I dug a little bit into this one. This is the one that I'll show you guys. And basically the on, so this is the syntax for these YAML files. And if we look at the on command here, we see here that you can kind of put on push, and you can do an array to say several, and you can also do a detailed way of saying, so essentially these are like, what are the triggers? When would it occur? And this is the kind of thing you can almost just understand from looking at the file once you've seen enough of these kind of things and you work with CIs. It's like, okay, once you get the basics of it. So it's saying on when you push to the master branch, we want to run this, or when you do a pull request to the master branch. Now, I don't like these rules for now. Maybe at some point this will make sense, but we're going to use these more simple rules of just on push. And we're just going to have it like that. We don't need an array because we're not going to do push and pull request. We're just going to focus on push for now. I feel like if you do it on every commit push, plus you have the linting, I don't know if you'd need to do it on a pull request, but maybe you would. So let's think about that later. Let's delete this stuff from our examples then, because we don't need that. So what about jobs? So they've got here, they're called their jobs build. This guy calls it Jest. I don't like either of those. I think I'm going to just call it test because it's called npm test. Now, another one here is, yeah, they're using the checkout v1. Actually, these guys are using checkout v1 too. I'm not a fan of either of those. Geez, did I not have a better example? Let's do one here. Let's say GitHub Actions Jest main.yml. Let's just do a little peek to see. This is another one on the Git marketplace. What did I copy? Oh, okay. Instead of the example, I copied a usage by mistake, I guess. This is a stupid usage. Oh, this is to use his action. I see. Foolish of me there. So what did this say here? You don't need this action. GitHub Actions have everything you need. Oh, okay. So he's saying rather than using this custom action, you can just use his thing, I think is what he's saying. But let's not. I want to use this. That was the original example I actually wanted. But I just was copying and pasting like a blind man here. So again, let's paste what he had here. So yeah, this was actually pretty nice. So I didn't want CI. Again, I wanted tests. And for jobs, again, for build, I wanted test. I guess we can just call it tests again. It's a bit redundant, but I want to keep it all as minimal as possible. And I don't want to say something like Jest, and then maybe we switch someday. You never know. So here it's like runs on Ubuntu latest. It's saying, how would you like me to run the tests? And from what I've seen, this seems to be a pretty default example. If you wanted to go more into that, you can always go to these workflow examples and find where they talk about that. Let's see here. Runs on. Where is that one? Runs on. Is that part of. What is that part of? That's part of the tests. Let's just search for it. Runs on. There it is. So you can see here and you can see the options, and that's cool. You can actually run it on a ton of different systems. I like this Ubuntu latest idea. I like that it's latest. I guess you could run it on Windows, but I don't think we need to worry about that. So sure, Ubuntu latest. And then we got these nice clean steps here where they've got separated by name for both of them. I like that. I like compared to this, where it's kind of got these two together. Although actually this isn't terrible either, to be honest. Both of them are pretty nice. But I like the separation here. So let's just do this. This is install modules. No yarn. We're going to do npm i. npm i is just short for npm install, by the way. So we'll just do npm i. And then here run tests. And again, we're not using yarn, sorry. And again, we're going to just do the short of T, but it's the same as test in this case. And this is only for certain scripts from npm scripts. So yeah, there we go. That's a lot nicer. So now we got the v2 checkout. We got our install modules. We got our run tests. All right, so that looks pretty clean. So what else do we need to do? Let's go back to this quickly and just see, was there anything else that this guy suggested? He again talks about how to name it. He kind of explains the ways he did it. So there's nothing else as far as the code goes. So let's commit what we have. Let's double check. So we have just that main YAML file. We want to make an action called tests on push of the branches. And the job that it runs is called tests. It runs it on Ubuntu latest. And the steps is that it checks out our code. It installs the modules via the npm i command, and then it runs our tests via npm t. That looks clear. Let's see if it works, and let's write a thing for it. So let's say added test action workflow, I guess. It's called testing. Testing action workflow. Okay. Gotta save those 6 bytes. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess in some ways this actually is not as good because it's less explicit. So maybe we don't want to save the bytes. I mean, that is more clean. npm install, npm test. I guess I'm just trying to be cool because I know about npm int. But at the same time, actually, let's not save the bytes and let's make it more explanatory. And let's just do it that way. Good comment. Good comment. Although I think your comment was kind of telling me it was okay, and it made me change my mind. So live and learn, I guess. So added testing action workflow. Great. Let's commit that. And it's going to do the linting and stuff again, the pre-commit hooks. Oh, you see it did a little prettier change there, I think. Cool. Fine with that. Whatever you want to do. Okay, so let's push that and let's check out what happened because I want to see what this does. So we go into the code here. We switch to our branch. Actually, we don't even need to switch to our branch. So all we have to do is go to actions and we should see it in here. In a perfect world, there it is, tests. And we can see that it's orange here means it's running the test right now. Added testing action workflow, that's just the wording from the commit. If we go into it here, we can see it's doing the thing called tests that we called it. And we can look at tests and we can see the things it did. So it set up the job, okay, including doing the checkout procedure with v2 like we wanted. Here's it running the v2, checking out our code. That's all that does. Now it's doing the install modules phase. That's the npmi command. And we can see it doing that here. And this is using our minutes, our action minutes of the 2000 that we have, whatever it was. Okay, it did it. It installed the modules, ran the test passed, post cleanup, boom. And now, cool. Now we got now if you go to actions, you'll see we got the green check mark. And you'll actually see that on our commit itself, I believe. If we go to our branch and we go to our commits, you'll see that that's the only commit now that has a little checkbox. And if you click in the checkbox, you can see that it passed the tests and you can look at the details of the test. So now we have tests. So now now it's very hard to slip in mistakes to the code. I mean, it's still easy to slip in mistakes, but they're good mistakes now instead of the ones where it's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have caught that. So yeah, now we have the CI testing. Honestly, that's it for that. And I'm just gonna see another comment from Daniel here. Gotta hack the planet. Nice. What did he write here? Fix all ESLint. This is a pretty cool to add to VS Code settings to do some of the formatting on save, even before Husky lint. Oh, okay, yeah. This is good advice. I haven't thought yet to edit the VS Code config files, but let's at least quickly look at it just as an idea, just to hear him out here because it is a good idea. So in VS Code, there's a settings.json file that you can change things on. And if his setting here was in regards to, let's just paste. You can see his setting in the comments here. Basically, let's actually copy the whole thing and then I can dump it into a text thing to show you here, into my code. So yeah, he basically sent me this link here and it's of course not going to format too well. But that's the config, like so. And we're not gonna, oh man, this is longer than I thought it was. Okay, it's not so bad. I don't think I formatted that correctly. That feels wrong, the way I did that. Well, long story short, maybe I missed a bracket or something like that. But basically, in VS Code, in these JSON settings, you can set up all these like hooks of their own, essentially, so that when you press Control S and you save it, it can run these lints ahead of time. And maybe in the next video, we'll get into that. I'm not completely prepared. I don't have anything half-baked. I don't have any links to show, but Daniel's absolutely right, and that's a good idea. YouTube sadly doesn't provide any code formatting stuff. Yeah, it's very rough, the comments as far as that. But no, it's perfectly fine. It's very useful code. Thank you, Daniel. And that'll be in the chat forever, so someone else can copy that, and you can look at the VS Code settings and see all sorts of cool stuff in there. And that's another way to catch things, yeah, because sometimes when you're doing that commit, you don't want to wait for the lints. That's where it can be nice, where every time you press save, it's just fixing things for you. And then it's a lot faster when it comes time. Because maybe if you commit, maybe you have a ton of things that need fixing. You never know. Okay. So what have we got so far? So we basically we've tightened up the ship. We got the testing, we got the linting. I think that pretty much settles us for those kind of things. And now we can move on to actually, before we move on to styled components, I'm going to take a detour and I'm going to jump ahead And I'm going to move the code checking part up a bit. Because now that we've checked our code with linting, we've checked it with testing, let's just check the code as it is. Right? So if we go to our terminal here, I think we are not running the code right now. Let's run it. Hopefully it still runs. We haven't tested it since we've done all these changes. Looks like it still runs. So we're going to go into it here. I'm going to open it up. It's going to open in the wrong window. And we're going to take a peek at our hello world just to make sure it works. Okay. And it seems to be missing something, like the hello world part. There we go. Hello world. Okay. So why did I load this page? The reason I did is because I would like to talk briefly about some kind of code checking that you can do. An example of one is, so this is something I used to use a lot more back in the day, actually, was this W3C markup validation service. When I used to write much more HTML, I used to try to stay close to this. And I don't know if there's any linting or any kind of tools for this. This would be another one where it'd be cool if we could add. Maybe we could add it in the CI or something, I'm not sure. But the basic idea of it is that it checks your HTML for things that other tools are not checking for, essentially. And let's check our code. So one thing to note too is that we're running the dev version here. I'm not going to do a build because the code's pretty similar for the errors that I care about here, but there could be some slight changes between the dev generated code versus the prod code. So once we have a deploy, I would much rather test the deployed code and I would just put the address in here. But for now, I'm going to just copy the source. So we're just going to copy these massive text here and we're going to dump it in as direct input and we're just going to do a check on it. And we're going to see what kind of things come up. So you see we've already got a couple little errors. Interesting. Consider adding a lang attribute to the HTML start tag to declare the language of the document. Okay, what's that all about? This is a lot like linting, like I say. So it's finding things and then we can start to dig into them. So if we look here to our old friends that are not friends to everybody, the W3C school, you just see the basic idea of what a title tag is. It's just the title for the page. It's the thing that shows up here. That's simple enough. I don't even know why I copied that link, to be honest. Here's a better link. This link is from the W3 org site themselves, saying about declaring language in HTML. And they basically say, always use a language attribute on the HTML tag to declare. So it's good to do. Let's do it. It's just like part of our linting here where we're doing accessibility and that kind of thing. We want to be as accessible as possible. So let's look how to do it. I actually know how to do it, and we'll just show you here. It's basically in regards to these custom document, which do we already have a custom document? I don't think we do. Let's double check. I don't think we do. Pages, no, we have the app and we have the index. But what we could do is we could add this custom document, which essentially generates the entire page, or it allows us to modify things like in the head and other such areas. It's a Next.js aspect. It's something for Next.js. It's a way that they've given us to edit the head of the document. There are other ways too, but this is a nice way to do it. So we go in there and let's do it. Let's make a document here. Now it's called JS here. Now we know we want the TSX. We're not doing any of that JS stuff. And we're going to copy their example here because I think that's pretty bare bones what they've got here. And this in some ways goes against some of what I fight against for boilerplate because we're just adding more documents here. We're adding a lot of code just to get the lang header, but we're going to need this document file later anyways for styled components. And sometimes you have to add these things. Sometimes you need this kind of boilerplate because it's important to add this. So it's going to start complaining right away. What's the first thing it's complaining about? Sorting. Okay, so it probably can sort these things here. It's another nice little fix. It's even better than the example. Okay, so it sorted those alphabetically. Okay, cool. What about here? What's it complaining about? Missing return type. Okay, yeah, we don't have a return type here for the get initial prompt. Is it possible to infer it? Looks like it was. So document context, great. The get initial props, that's a little harder to infer, I think. It looks like it's returning a promise of this type. Let's see if it says anything here about the TypeScript version, because it might. Here we go. Here's a TypeScript version. Okay, it does give us that document context. It gives us the document context, but it does not give us So we already knew that. It doesn't give us this piece here that we need. Right now we have an any, but that should not be an any. Let's see if the project that I made, if I ever figured out what it was supposed to be. And if you were trying to figure it out for yourself, I'm sure it's not so hard, but it's always a fight for these little things sometimes just to try to figure out, well, what is it, you know? With TypeScript, when it's a function you haven't written, it can sometimes be a little tricky. So let's see what I've decided it was. Okay, so right, before we even know here, this is wrong. And if we highlight over this, we know it can't be any because we're returning a promise. Why are we returning a promise? Because this is asynchronous. So even just hovering over this, I should have known, get rid of this any here. And when I originally hovered over this, it gave me more information. Yeah, so right away, I should have known it was a promise. So even if I was to do any, I would do it like that. So that's going to give us, it's not red now, but it's saying you should not use any because any is not descriptive enough. So going back to our one where I kind of already figured it out. Okay, it's something called document initial props. So I don't know how I figured that out before, to be honest. Maybe it was in here. It was in the example. No, it was not. So I'm not sure how I figured it out before, but we know it now. So now we know it's document initial props. And it's complaining because we don't have that type. All we have to do is import it. Again, our VS Code is very helpful a lot of times with these quick fixes, and it can just add it. And it's added it there. So you see this list is quite huge. Now, one thing I don't like here, and I'm going to split this up, is I like the types to be where the types are. So some of these are types. Some of these, and types have a different import. Now, you don't need to import them differently, but I prefer to. So because then you're being explicit to say, I'm only using this import for a type. So document, that's really being used. So that's not a type. Document context is a type. Document initial is a type. None of this other stuff is a type. So let's delete all that and let's not put it in here. And there we go. That's a lot more clean, I think. Now we know these are the types. These are the other things they need. What's render complaining about? Missing return type again. Is it? Where is it missing the return type? Here, I guess. Where is it? Oh, right here, I guess. Oh, yeah, okay. So what is this? Let's see if it can infer it. No. What did I put here? Oh, so we can see from my example code, I've put a React element. That's reasonable. And if we went into the, I believe the index page, I think I came to the same conclusion that I was in a React element. In fact, let's copy this import code here because we already have it. We'll put it in its place here. So it's complaining again with the sorting. Let's just let it sort. Remove import from React. Why? Oh, because we're not yet using it, I'm guessing. Let's use it before we try to auto fix anything. There we go. So it's still there. So now it's just the auto sort solution. So something wasn't ordered correctly there. Ooh, I hate the way it ordered that. Well, that's that opinionated sorting. It's like, if this is the way it wants to do it, okay. I think the logic here is that it's combining these two together, but I much would have rather it kept the import types together so that the types are here and then other stuff's there. But hey, it's consistent. That's all I'm caring about for now. So we have our example document, and again, we're not getting those trailing semicolons. Let's try to do a lint here and see if it complains about that. Because if it doesn't complain about that, maybe I need to add that. Because I want my trailing semis. Okay. So it's not enforcing that, but I want to. Is that something Prettier can enforce? Prettier trailing semicolons. I think that's probably more of an ESLint thing. Add a semicolon at the end of every statement. Okay, it actually is. Semi. Interesting. So that's actually set as true. So is this one of those things where the ESLint rules are fighting with each other? Because I would have expected that rule. See, Prettier's at the end, so strict true you'd think would have been... Well, that could be tricky. Daniel said, sorry, Daniel, I missed your message till earlier. What was it that you didn't like? Could you repeat? He's arguing about something. There's so many things to argue about that it's hard to know which thing. Because there's definitely some frustrations. But yeah, okay, so that's interesting. So let's test this here for a second. Let's go to ESLint. Well, Daniel's figuring out... Oh, the import sorting. Yeah, that is frustrating, hey? No, I really don't like that version. But it's opinionated, but, you know, I could change it later. If everybody hates it, we can actually customize that ESLint rule, so that's something to consider for a later date. But first, let's check out this thing as soon as I remember what I wanted to look at. Oh, yes, ESLint trailing semicolon. So I want to add this rule back here. Is this the rule? Where am I here? Yeah. So we want it to error always. I don't know why this wasn't working before. I'm going to add this rule just as a test. See if that actually makes it work. Because I don't want any of that non-semi stuff slipping by. Okay, there we go. So that fixed it. But why was that ever happening? Let's, as a quick test, so let's get rid of that. Does it care about commented code? Probably. Sometimes you can't do comments in JSON. Okay, here you can. I think with ESLint you can. So I'm commenting that out for a second. You see here, and it's not complaining again. I want to just see if changing the order here. What if I don't use this prettier extension? So it's not that. Could it be this one? No, because it was doing that earlier too. Could it? I wonder which one it could be. Could it be the Airbnb stuff? What's so opinionated here? How many of these do I have to disable before it stops? Before it works? What if I just have ESLint recommended? And then I run it. Well, for some reason I have to be explicit with my semi. I don't know why. Oh, did it fail finally? Oh no, I just broke ESLint now. At what point did I break ESLint? Oh, okay, so you can't have those in here. It doesn't like that at all. Did that fix it? So now ESLint's running with just recommended. Yeah, so it's not complaining about those semis. That's weird. So I'm not going to fight with that for now. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add the rule for now. Because I want this, but this should be part of prettier. So I'm going to make a comment to do figure out why this is needed. Yeah, I shouldn't need to add this rule. This should be recommended. This should be in prettier. So yeah. I'm going to make a note for that for now. And I'm just going to move on. But I'm going to add them because I like them. But they're not catching them for me, so I might miss a couple. That's the... Oh, wait a minute. I just added the rule again. What happened? So if I added the rule again, how come I'm not seeing them now? Let's get rid of this comment. It hates comments. If I get rid of the comment, I think ESLint's broken now. Sometimes your ESLint breaks too. That's another frustrating thing. If you mess with too many rules and try to do this testing. So let me close it and reopen it now. There we go. So it's broken, or it's not broken now, but the code's broken. So now if I run it, we'll see. And now I can just do some auto fixing too, actually. This is fixable, but I can see these here. So now they're easy to see. Okay, we'll add a space there because I like spaces after declarations, but before returns typically. Maybe that's something, a rule I could have. Okay, so we got our boilerplate document, just like they said to do here. Here. No, not here. Where is it? This is the one that they said where they actually have an example of head, because we need to get to head. So now that we got access to the head, sorry, to the HTML tag is actually the one I care about, we can add that lang that they're talking about. So what should lang be? Does it say? Let's go check what lang can be. Let's see what the rule complaint, did the rule actually tell us? It didn't specify. I think it can just be something like en, choosing language tag. I think so. Can we do like en? Huh. Let's assume en works, but actually let's just check my code too, so that we don't assume and we make an ass out of you and me, is what they say assuming gets you sometimes. So let's see here if in the code, how did we do it? Pages, document, and oh, very fancy. So I've actually passed it from the environmental variable. I don't want to get into environmental variables today because I don't even like the way I did it. I did it through Next.js, but I'm not a fan of that. So lang is just en in the end, I guess, unless I used locale. I don't think I used locale. Pretty sure I just used lang. Yep. So we're gonna hard code that for now. But when we get internationalization and when we get a lot of other cool stuff, we're gonna do it a different way. So essentially, we fixed that little complaint that W3C was giving us. Now, what does this get us fixing this stuff, by the way? Because some people are probably asking that. My mentality and where I come about with a lot of this nitpicking is when I used to work for a company where SEO was really important. And there's a lot of myth around what helps with SEO, search engine optimization. And we don't even necessarily care about it, to be honest, for us. But sometimes having these little things can be... You'll see an article where they'll say, oh, the Google robot, it likes that, you know, or it likes this to be formatted this way, or it likes you to use schema for here. It's questionable what the real logic of it is, and Google's not just going to say, here's what you need to do to get to the top of Google. So I'm always trying to get these little one-ups and just try to have my code kind of pass everything whenever possible. So what's the next thing it's complaining about? Element head is missing a title. That's true. So there's no title either. So let's give it a title. The title is in head. So we're going to have to expand head here. And we're just going to add title. And for here, I think I did something cool that I'm going to do again, which is to import the title right from our package file. And to do that, I just go import from package.json. And it's a JSON file, so we can import with Next.js. It's all set up and the way the modules are set up. And we just need to see what field we want. So this is a typical JSON. So we're just going to take the name. Simple as that. So the title is going to grab the name. And we could also do description, but I don't really care right now. So let's not waste our time with that. So we got name, and we just have to put it in here. And it's just going to be called name, I guess, isn't it? Let's see if sort this here. Yeah, there we go. So we got name. And we could, yeah, it's good like that. So that should get us some steps further, and let's check. Are we still running? Yeah, we're still running this. I think we're probably going to have to rebuild, turn this off, the Next.js dev environment, when we remake the document like this. So I've made the document, I'm rerunning Next.js. And it's going to refresh our hello world example. And if we're lucky, I think we'll see in the title here that it'll change. So there we go. Now our title is an X. And presumably we have a lang as well. So let's go into the bigger code here. Go into our document. You'll see now there's an X. And if we view the source here and we copy this HTML and we go to our validator and we go back to the main page for the validator, which was this one here. We're going to dump our new code in and we're going to do check. And drum roll. Ooh, green, our favorite color. So now essentially we've got valid HTML. And that's just another little thing that we have, another little advantage. So we're going to commit that, I think. So this is an unrelated linting rule. Ugh, I groan about adding that. Let's do it the really weird way where we're adding a ton of commits, and I'm going to make this a separate commit. So I pressed the little plus symbol there to just stage this one change. And then I'm going to say explicitly added semi-rule to ESLint or now. ... Okay. And yeah, so that's, I just want to separate that because I don't want that getting mixed up with our other change. Again, it's doing its pre-commits, linting. Okay, now the document change. So all we've done is added a document. Looks like a lot of code, but basically we just did it so that we could add a title and we could set the HTML to lang. That's something that we couldn't do by default because Next.js doesn't have that by default. And the document's valid in every way because we've done our sorts the way we want. We've done our linting. We've done all of our declarations of everything. So we're set there. So let's add that one as well. And what is this complaint here? What is it complaining about? Title should not be used in document. Oh, okay. Okay, so let's actually read errors when they occur, and let's see what we need to change here. I guess I probably don't do it this way. Title should not be used in document. Okay, so it's good to look at your console for Next.js because it's going to tell you stuff. So here's an example of me doing it wrong, I guess. Oh, okay, so title should be in my app. Okay. Well, let's do that then. So let's copy, let's just go back to the example we had then. We'll go back to our document. So I think that this head is a special one. It's not the same head. This is the next document head. So I made a wrong assumption. So let's copy our code so we don't completely lose it. We don't need that import anymore because I put it in the wrong place. And it did work the way it was, but it's not what Next.js recommends because we're not using head correctly. So I'm actually surprised it worked. It probably shouldn't have worked, you'd think. Anyways, so what it was recommending was actually it should be in our app file here. So let's do that. So what was the example again here? Let's look at the example. Let's just copy the example the way it is. We're going to have to TypeScriptify this, and we don't need quite a bit of this. But let's just check it out. So we already have all that established. We have all this established. So this is the example. We need to change this basically. So we're going to keep this part here. This is our component. It actually already was there, the code. Essentially, all they've done is added head, and they've surrounded it in these special fragment brackets. That's a special React syntax. And now they've imported head from next head. So you can see it was a different head. So I probably had the wrong one. So we import it there. And essentially that was it. So we don't need this example anymore. Let's get rid of that code. And we just have our example. And it's complaining about the semi that we didn't add. And it wants us to sort our imports. And otherwise it's done. So, oh, okay. So now we want our title and stuff now. Let's copy our title that we had, which was the dynamic one. And it's saying, hey, where's name? I don't know about name. So for name, we need to paste that here. And it's going to complain again about the sorting because I don't have any intuition for the sorting rules here. But as long as it does it for me, I don't care. So great. So now we've updated the app and the document because that was what it suggested. If we look here, so now we've added head here within the app. Same concept. And we've added the document, but a much more cut down one. Let's test this. We're going to do run dev, and we're going to look at the console this time and make sure it's not slipping in any errors. And we're also going to keep an eye here to make sure the title still fixes itself. Okay, great. So we do have the title again. Just for redundancy's sake, now that we've changed it, I'm going to once again check the code. Ideally, it wouldn't have changed, you would hope. But you never know. You never know with these things. So a lot of programming mistakes happen. Okay, green. We got green still. Good to hear. So back to our code. We're ready to commit this now properly. There's no more errors. So let's do the commit. What did we do? We added lang and title to HTML doc. You meant there. Yeah, based on W3C, but we don't have to say that. So we essentially fixed the W3C stuff. It's going to run prettier on whatever it needs to run. You see it clean that up there. It's still doing its linting checks. Okay, it passed all the linting checks. It committed that. So we're going to push these two things. We're going to push some more stuff. And we're going to get some of this stuff out of the way to see what's next on the list. So yeah, so there's a little more to code checking I wanted to discuss actually. Another really cool tool called Lighthouse. And that is, like I say, another really cool tool. We're still running the code, I believe. Yes, we are. So I'm going to show you what Lighthouse is. We're just going to go to a page here to talk about it. Lighthouse is actually built into the browser, so I'm going to open it in the browser in a minute and show you there. But Lighthouse, let's see. Lighthouse is an open source automated tool for improving the quality of web pages. Sounds pretty good. Essentially, it just scans your page for a lot of different metrics and gives you some score points. And let's just get right into seeing how it is. So we're going to open DevTools, and we're going to open it here. Like so, and you see Lighthouse is just a tab right there, and we can just click it. And we want to test the desktop version. There's some things we don't need to test here. So at this point, we don't need to test for progressive web app because we don't have progressive web app. Everything else, let's test for. So let's generate a report, and let's see what it looks like. And it should be pretty simple for Hello World. Hopefully, it would get 100% performance, but who knows? It didn't, so I don't know why, but let's not worry about that. I think it's probably because we're running it in dev and maybe it would do better once it's deployed, but let's just not worry about that for now. Yeah, I think the performance is going to be because it's complaining about some other stuff. Once we do a deploy, then we'll do a proper Lighthouse test. For what we care about for now is accessibility and for best practices typically, because performance is going to be something that you kind of figure out as you go. It's going to be based on a lot of things, the size of dependencies, of modules, of how fast your web server is, the protocols it uses, the computer, obviously, the other things running in the background, like in this case, because npm run dev runs the code differently, it has a bit more overhead. So let's not worry about that. It's also not minifying the code, it looks like here, so that we can inspect it properly. But when a production build, all the code would be minified as well, so it would load faster. But the good news is for accessibility and for best practices, we're 100%. And for SEO, what is it suggesting here? Document does not have a meta description. Okay, cool, we can do that. Let's press learn more and see what it's talking about here. So basically it's just saying that we need the meta name description. And that is another really easy thing for us to add. So let's go back to our code here and add that as well and get 100% on something else. So Great. We need to add the meta tags to head, and we actually already have an opening into head now from what we added here. So as far as whether it should go before or after the title, I have no idea. I'm going to put it after the title just because I want to. And I'm going to do this, I think. I want the tag to be an end tag like that. There's nothing inside meta. That's something it tried to automatically do there, if you guys don't know. If I paste it, you see, oh, now it's not doing it. So if I do that and I paste this, you see how VS Code is trying to help me by opening a tag here. But these meta tags, they don't have data inside them. So when you remove that, all you have to do is say, this is the end of the tag. This is the whole tag by doing that little syntax there that I did. So we want a description. So this is the name. We actually need a value though, I think. Let's go back here and double check. The content attribute. Okay, so we want to call it content within the meta name description. So we go back here and we say that the content equals, and we're going to do dynamic again. We're going to do the description variable that is in our JSON, our package.json. So how are we going to, oh, we don't need these quotes then. There we go. And what's it complaining about? Cannot find description. True dat. So all we have to do is put it right there. And if we see what is description, if we go into package.json, we've written our description as desktop environment in the browser. So if we save that and we go back to our code here, we refresh, and if we view the source, well, let's not worry about viewing the source because it's somewhere in this mess. Let's just look and see. Let's just run the test again. So we're going to clear our test, and we're going to once again generate a report. Performance number might go up, might go down. The performance kind of jumps around sometimes. Stayed the same, but there we go. We're 100% on the other three. So at this point, we can kind of feel secure that before we add anything, we're at least at 100% on these three. That's probably not going to change, except when Lighthouse does updates and then they add more checks, and if we fail those checks as well. But we've essentially made it the code more valid, I guess. And again, just tightening that ship even more. So let's make this little update as well. Say added meta description. And both of these are dynamic from package.json, which is a nice touch, I feel. I like that one. Okay, and with that, we can push that. And so we pushed a lot here. Let's go take a look at the code again. Not the code, sorry, or the repo, the repository. I want to just make sure that our last few tests have passed. And I actually you get emails if the tests don't pass, which is super cool. But I haven't been checking my email right now, so I'm not sure. Oh, this is not our branch. This is our branch here. So you see our changes here have been happening. So you can see the tests ran here and the tests ran here, and they did not run for this. The reason why they did not run for this is because we didn't change anything that was JavaScript. We just changed some JSON. But in the scenarios in which anything JavaScript changed, it did rerun that test. So that's helpful. That's nice of us to know that. And we can close this now. We don't need to see this. And let's get back into the code. So we're at the 2-hour mark. Thank you guys again for staying with me, tuning in. It's probably going to be another 3-hour podcast is my attempt, my hope. But we don't have a heck of a lot more to talk about. Basically, I want to add styled components. I want to talk about Storybook, and I want to quickly talk about the process manager and using context versus Redux, and what we've decided there, as well as quickly discussing what we're going to talk about next stream. And just to quickly again deviate before we talk about the styled components, I want to quickly just spoiler alert tell you guys that I've decided not to use Storybook for now. But I do want to mention Storybook because it's one of the things that we're going to be lacking in our project for a little bit. But lacking is a tough word. So build bulletproof UI components faster. Storybook is an open source tool for developing UI components in isolation. It makes building stunning UIs organized and efficient. That sounds pretty cool. And I think one day we will want that. But I think we should just focus for now on the one theme that we want, because we know exactly what our theme is. The Storybook is essentially Windows. We can just look at Windows and we can see all the buttons and everything in action. But in the future, I would like people to be able to see all that interactivity and to be able to understand how the components work. So that's where this could be cool in the future, because if you see here, this is essentially the Storybook interface, and there'll be all these stories of how your components can do certain things. So we could have like a taskbar here, and we could make it do little dynamic things like, what if you open the start menu? What if you what's a process look like when it gets added to this taskbar? We could do these stories, but That's a lot of work, and it's really for very little payoff for us right now. So I'm not going to get us down that road, honestly. So that's the long and short of Storybook and why I'm not going to do it. But I also wanted to mention that there is examples on how to do it. So if down the road we do it, or if you guys want to do it, it's another one of those Next.js examples they have with Storybook, and you can just kind of do it yourself. But it's a lot of code. It's a ton of code, and it's, again, I don't want to scare people away. I don't want setup to finish with thousands of lines of code. Not that there's thousands there, but I want people to feel like what we added is always improving the code. And for the most part, I feel like we're still there. None of this is superfluous at this point, I feel. Although some of it's going to get removed in the next step here. And I just got to take a sip of water here after our 2-hour mark. Okay, I think we're finally ready to get into styled components. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to uninstall Sass, because styled components essentially use their own syntax that's very much like Sass. Hey guys, hopefully I'm back up. Sorry once again. Thanks, Daniel. He said this stream is fire. It was so fire that it froze OBS again. So next stream, I'm going to have to resolve this. Last stream, it didn't freeze at all. So I'm not going to fix it on the fly. But unfortunately, yeah, it's dropped out a few times. But yeah, Daniel jinxed it with his fire comment, I think. So we're just going to go back in here. We're going to refocus our windows here. We had a code window open. No, this was the Chrome window, actually. And this was our code window, like so. And we got our app window here, which is coming from, not from there, from this guy. Oh no, where did it go? It's been renamed. Now it's X. I was looking for the title for it. So sorry again, flustered again with his darn OBS freezing on me, but thank you guys for holding on. Oh man, did my commit link for the import type sorting not get in there? In here? Import type sorting. Did you send a commit? What happened? Did he add a commit? That's right. So yeah, Daniel was thinking of adding... Well, for now, I'm not going to mess with the import sorting rules. Maybe we'll do that on another one, but yeah, they're a little gross, and I would rather the types be together, and I think there for sure is a way to do that. So getting back on track, styled components. Oh, he sent it earlier, but it disappeared. Oh, so Daniel had a commit. So let's take a quick peek at his commit just to get an idea for what he was suggesting there, because it's appreciated. Yeah, so here's a cool grouping rule here that he set up. It looks like he has found it from an example here. And maybe this grouping is a little more like how we want it. It's regex wonky, so it's really, well, I don't know if that's regex. Whatever this is, it's definitely not easy to read. But that could be the sorting order we want. So in the future, when we start messing with sorting order, we'll figure that out. Thank you, Daniel, for that, by the way. So styled components. Let's quickly talk. What are styled components? Essentially, I don't want to use the SCSS files anymore. I want the CSS to be part of the JavaScript file. So in the same way that rather than have HTML be separate, I'm using JSX to have the elements and the JavaScript together. Now I'm also bringing in the CSS element of that, essentially, by being able to make these special custom components. So we're going to read through it here. So basically, what did I have here? So we're not doing Storybook. You're right. First thing we want to do is we want to uninstall Sass, because we don't need Sass for this because it has its own custom syntax, and we had Sass installed. Also, I wanted to move Sass to a dev dependency, but I don't think we have to worry about that. I think it could have been a dev dependency, but at the same time, we're about to uninstall it, so let's not worry about it. So we're getting rid of Sass. That's the first thing. We don't need that we don't need that dependency anymore. Instead, we need styled components. So let's also go peek at styled components here. I think my stream's crashing every hour, I guess, because it crashed at the 2-hour mark, at the 1-hour mark. Maybe my file size is some kind of file size issue. I don't know. I guess we'll see if it crashes at the 3-hour mark. Please stay with me if it does, because I'll slip back on for any goodbyes and such. So let's look at styled components. So I just went to installation. That should be simple enough, and let's try it out. Let's do install. So it's doing save. Interesting. I wonder if it can be save dev. I feel like it should be able to, but maybe not. Let's leave it as a save instead of save dev, because if Sass thought it needed to be a dependency and not a dev dependency, styled components is saying that. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But we're going to install styled components like it says. And we're going to move on to the next step here. We don't need this resolutions thing. We're going to go getting started. Okay, so we got a hello world here. And I'm eager to, let's just replace this hello. Let's just use this right now. Their hello world. It seems like a decent example. Yeah, that's a good example. So let's convert our hello world into their hello world to start. Let's go to our index page. So this is our hello world. And you can see their hello world is a lot more simple. Or sorry, theirs is not a lot more simple. If anything, it's more complex. So they're doing this render wrapper hello world. So that's actually the same. So I actually don't care about this. What I care about is this title part here. So you see that's a custom component that they made, a styled component. They've also made another one called wrapper. I'm not going to worry about that one. We just want to show an example of one styled component. I'm not going to worry about color. Actually, we'll call it blue, I guess. Let's say blue. Or no, whatever. Let's use the color that they picked. We don't need these comments. They're straightforward enough. So let's move this up to here. So we want to declare the styled component. And in the future, there's going to be a whole other organizational structure for how we do this, but we're not going to get into that this moment. So it's complaining about styled because styled is something we need from styled components. Let's see if they actually told us to do that. They didn't just give us the import command. That would have been handy, but we can find it ourselves. Actually, at this point, I want the import command. So let's also look at the example that Next.js has provided us, which is probably written in here somewhere. I have it. Yes, here it is. Again, there's two examples. We have the with styled components, and we also have the with styled components with TypeScript styled components, which is another nice one. And so let's look at the styled components one, and let's just see what they did for their hello world example. They got their index here. Oh, so they've done almost exactly the exact same thing, but they've added theming. Interesting. We'll get there, but let's first just copy this. So there's our import command we were looking for, and we're going to get to theming though. We're going to add that on this one here. So there's the import command we need to get our styled command. Oh, have we not installed styled components? What's it complaining about there? Oh, okay. Oh, it wants the types. Very, very good point. So this is something that VS Code will sometimes tell you is that, hey, you've installed the dependency, but there's also some TypeScript types you can install. And it's much appreciated, and I'm going to copy that command just like they say. And it's always save deb for the type declarations. So we're going to save those, and that's going to stop it from complaining, and it's also going to give styled a little more TypeScript information so that if we hover over styled, we might get more information about what's going on. And we'll see here that it's done. This is going to go away, the squiggly lines like it did, and now when we hover over, you see there's a lot of information about what type it is. And what's it complaining about color here? What's the problem? Expected color to come from text align. Before text align. Oh, okay. It's again with sort order here. So we're going to move color up to here, like so. And now it's not complaining about that. And it's also complaining about the color. Set the color of an element. What is this complaint about the color itself? Sometimes it's hard for, well, so it's really hating this color. I don't know what the issue is with it. Let's just find the code for this color. It's this code right here. I think it doesn't like using the word. I think it prefers you use a color code like this. So let's do that. And so now we've got this component title. So now we want to use it instead of our h1 component. So we replace it here and we replace it there at the end. There's the start and end of the tags. And now essentially we have the same thing. And one thing to note here is that you see how we're getting this colored syntax, how it looks just like with CSS, where it knows this is the name of variable, it knows this is the value for the variable. Now, the reason that we're getting that is because of a VS Code extension I've installed. And I'll show you here that they talk about that in StyleLint. They also mention about syntax highlighting, essentially being able to see it this way. And depending on which IDE you use, they have different tools for that. For VS Code, the one that they use is called VS Code Styled Components. And I have a bookmark to it here, if you can call that a bookmark. So this is something you're going to want to install, VS Code Styled Components in your extensions. And you can see I have it here. If I do VS Code. Here it is here, Styled Components. You see I've got it installed because it says I can disable it. So that's what's allowing me to see this colored syntax. Otherwise, this template literal would just be all one color and it would be not as nice. So we're going to add that styles. We're going to do that. Okay, that's all good. Let's see if our node compiled. It looks like it's compiled. So what does our hello world look like? Well, it actually looks good. It looks correct. I'm surprised it looks correct because I wouldn't have expected that would have worked, honestly. Let's close this. I thought there would have been more steps, to be honest. Let's try this again. Okay, it actually seems to be configuring that pretty good. Okay, so here's some complaints we're getting. Cannot find module Sass. Okay, so that's for our global file, first of all. So, right, we uninstalled Sass because we didn't need it anymore, but we're still using it. So, what is that for? That's for our styles, our global styles. So we need to fix that. So let's look at what we had for examples here, and let's see what they did with TypeScript. So let's see what all the settings they did. Did they change anything in tsconfig? Looks like no, they didn't need to change tsconfig. What did they end up adding for package? The types, okay, so there's this Babel plugin. I think that's something we're definitely going to want, and I believe I have a link here where they really recommended that. Let's see here. That's in styled components, and if you look again on styled components website, they talk about the Babel plugin under tooling, and they say this plugin adds support for server-side rendering, minification of styles, and a nicer debugging experience. Ah, yes, server-side rendering. That's what we're missing, and that's why I felt like we're missing something. So the way the code is now is actually working. That's why our hello world did look pink the way that we expected it to. The error we're getting is because I uninstalled Sass a little prematurely, but right now it's half working essentially, but no server-side rendering, which we need when we're generating the pages. So we're gonna want this Babel plugin essentially, and we know the reason we know about it is because we found it in these examples here. So a little bit of searching is required though. So it was also in the documentation for Stylint, so you might have found it that way. Anyways, I've copied the install command, saved dev for the Babel plugin. We're saving the Babel plugin like so. And let's look at the installation process that it recommends. Very simple. It just wants you in the Babel RC file to add this. Now, this is tricky because I think it's different for Next.js. And the reason I say that, oh, let me not jump around here. The reason I say that is because going back to their example, under their Babel RC file, they've just used the word styled components rather than the Babel preset part, which was part of the original syntax here. Yeah, Babel plugin. So it looks like they don't need to use the word Babel plugin, so that's good. So let's copy their example here and let's use it the way they have. So we got plugins here, so we need to change our Babel file to match that and to enable the server-side rendering. So all we have to do is add that plugin, and there we go. Just like that, it's happy. And you see here it's done SSR true. Cool. And obviously that's for the server-side rendering. Now, one thing I noticed if when you're looking through the documentation is that for Stylint, is that there was another thing that sounded kind of cool to me that I saw that they weren't using, that the examples don't use, is this dead code elimination. It says here, due to how styled components are transpiled and constructed, by default, minifiers cannot properly perform dead code elimination on them because they are assumed to have side effects. However, there is a feature that can be enabled to aid this process called pure annotation. So that sounds interesting to me, and I feel like why not enable that until it doesn't work? Because dead code sounds bad, and I don't want it. I don't think we're going to be slipping too much dead code in, but hey, if it can eliminate it, all the better, you know? So let's add that as well. LMNOP, QRS, alphabetically it should be here. And there we go, we've added, so we got styled components, pure, and SSR. What else do we need to add to make that work? Let's go back and look at the example and see what else they've done, because there's one thing here that's very boilerplatey, but unfortunately we need it. And I'll show you where they got the idea from anyways. It's not git ignore at all. No, I'm in the wrong place there. Is there anything in the environment file that needs to change? Nope, that's the same environment file we have. But you see in pages here, it looks like they've made their own document, which we only just recently made. And here's the reasoning why, is that this is what's necessary for the server-side rendering. And that's what we're going to have to essentially copy this document here. So we're going to copy it. Now we already have a document, as you know, that we made. So we're going to still use that, and we're going to open that one as well. And we're going to get this stuff out of the way here. So the one that I copied, I'm going to set in my VS Code to say that this is TSX, TypeScript React here, just to get my coloring right, so I can compare the two kind of side by side here. And I'm also going to show you where it got that wording from, in case you're worried, in case you see that and you're like, whoa, 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 where'd all this code come from that they just made up? Because that's how I feel when I see examples like that. So back to the custom document here. Remember, we saw this part for doing the head and stuff, but there is another thing they mention here, not in the caveats. We don't have to worry about those for now. Is customizing the render page. Yes, we need to do that. And they even talk about reasonings why, such as CSS in JS, which is what we're trying to do with styled components. So you see here they have an example for how they would like you to do it. And we can look at that example. Let's go back to the code here, and we'll open that as well. And we'll also say that this is TypeScript React just to get the syntax. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare these two files just so we can see how far away was the example from this. And for comparing, it's actually pretty easy with VS Code. You open this, and if you pick the two files and you right click and you press compare. So you pick them with like holding Control or Shift. And so there we go. So now we have a comparison and we can see what's changed between the two. So this is their version here, and we're going to see what they've added. So they've added document context, good, because they did TypeScript. The server style sheet, we definitely are going to need that. This they've kept the same. They got export default here. I prefer that to the export default outside here, so that's actually better the way they're doing it. They've added sheet here. Okay, that's fine there. I feel like it could be added after, probably, from an order point of view. I don't think it matters, but it's alphabetically it's after, and also in the example, this is first, so let's just put it after. Let's get these semis in here, which I didn't see a warning about. Let's get the semis out, and let's see if it warns me after the fact. So here's where things deviate a bit. They've added a try here, probably useful, because they have a finally at the end. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to do the same kind of stuff. Okay, so here enhance app is generic and they're just passing an app. Whereas here we have to do the sheet, collect styles, and then pass in the props. Okay, so that's boilerplate. I never would have known to write that, but thank God this is here. And it's actually, I've looked at several tutorials and it's always the same. So this is essentially the boilerplate you need to get styled components to work properly with Next.js with server-side rendering. Again, this part's the same. This part, okay, that's just like that. And then they've added the styles piece here. Nothing here looks like something I would want to change, to be honest. It all looks like very clearly for style end. So let's use it. So we don't need this comparison anymore. We don't need that boilerplate one. We need the style sheet boilerplate one. So let's copy this and paste this in here. And now we have to make this fit. Oh, we have to make this fit with what we already had. Let's just actually do another compare. Let's compare the new one with our document so we can add to our document. So our document is on the right here and theirs is on the left, and we want to add their stuff. So do we have document context in types? Is it? Yeah, it's a type. Currently we do actually. We already have document context. So we've already done this. We've already done pretty much all of that actually. But the get initial props part, that part we need to change. Actually, is that at this part? No, we just need to move it. So there's very little difference actually here. What is this here? Why do I have that there? Ah, yes, because the get initial props. Okay, so is this all in get initial props? It is. So we're actually just extending this piece. Let's not do it with compare because, well, it's actually a little confusing reading it with compare. Let's not do it. So if we minimize this quickly, we can see everything's in get initial props. Whereas in our other one, we have all this stuff. So we're not going to be changing that. We're only going to be changing what's going on here, and very little is going on here. So let's look back at it. Let's just take that function. Let's comment out our original, and let's paste in the new one. And let's just make sure we haven't lost anything. All that this was doing was essentially returning those initial props. That's essentially all that's happening now. So nothing's changed here. I've lost my promise declaration. Let's bring that back from here, like so. And then it's complaining about this. Why? Because I haven't imported that yet. We'll take that. Put that in there. Looks like it's happy where I put it. That's nice. So we got that. Good. It's complaining about the line endings. That's still working. We don't want that new line there. And essentially we've done it. We've copied, we've upgraded static, fixing the new lines here still. Fix all those new lines, or sorry, all those semicolons after the line. That's what I meant, to end the statement. And there I think we go. So yeah, we've I'm going to add another new line here. I like the new lines before return. So essentially we haven't changed too much. Most of this boilerplate was just necessary to wrap it in the SSR. And we're still only at 48 lines. We're not at the 80 lines yet. So that's good to see. So we save that. There's no errors there. That looks pretty clean, I guess. And I think we're almost done as far as setting it up. But let's just double check what else there was. There was very little else left. We've done all of that. In the example here, right, so we had that. Okay, so essentially we're done there. And now we can go to the other one to see that themed example, because that's another giant step. And we also still have to deal with the global CSS file. So we need to deal with that before we can even run this thing. So let's so we need to go to our we need to look at our example here for what they did for the global style. I believe they put it in the app.js. And we can look here. If we look at the example, we see there's no CSS. So it's like, so all we have to do is start searching for it. Is it in the index? There's some CSS there, but not a global one. Where is the global style? Is it in app? There it is. Okay. So we need to add that basically. So again, let's copy their example. It looks pretty simple, their example. And let's see, what did we have for app again? We have a very cut down version of app. And let's get what they had there and put it side by side. And okay, so this makes sense. Sure, we're going to need to import styled components. So here currently we're importing the global SCSS. We can get rid of that. That we don't need anymore. Now we want the styled components one. And okay, it's already complaining about the order. Let's just fix the order real quick. Oh wait, I'm always trying to preemptively fix the order, but until I've implemented these, it's going to just want to remove them. So we definitely need that as well. So here's our global styles. And also I see the theme is here as well. Let's not do the theme just yet, but we're going to do it instantly after. So let's get that global style in first. So they're using something here called create global style. That's a special styled component function just for the global style. And we're going to copy what we had in our global CSS. And we're just going to paste that right here where it is. And we're going to format it properly. And there we go. So that's the global CSS that we already had. And now we can delete our SCSS file and we can delete the styles folder. We don't even need it. And okay, we got that. And now we need to use this somewhere. And what we can do is we can wrap, I think we could probably wrap everything in this, but we would just need to wrap the component, to be honest. Let's see what the example did. Yeah, well, no, the example has it actually outside of it. So let's put it right above the component. So there's our global style. Like so, we save that. Now we sort these imports. It's not going to remove them this time. Oh, we haven't used the theme provider. Right. Yeah, we don't want the theme provider yet. That's next. So I think we've fixed enough to at least run it. Now we have our global styled component. We have our styled index component. Yes, we're ready to try to run this again. So let's try to run it again. And we should see our hello world example kind of wake up and be a little bit better now, hopefully. Yes, we got it. We got the text center. We got everything we wanted now. And we don't have an error in Next.js. So at this point, we have it essentially. What else are we missing? Well, we got styled components working at least, but we are missing a few things still. One of the first things we're missing, if we look, is style lint. So we still want to be able to use style lint, obviously. So if we go to style lint here, styled components, and we look under tooling, they do have a solution for styled lint. And the solution is that you need to install this processor. And to test that it's not working right now, let's test that it's not working. So if we add another colon here, it's complaining actually. It's actually already working. Why is it already working? Interesting. I'm surprised it's already working, to be honest. I wonder if this is a VS Code extension. It's great that it can detect it. It might be part of this extension. Let's disable this extension just to see if that's it. Okay, I have to reload the editor. I'm going to reload it. Hopefully I don't... Oh, sorry guys, I was on the wrong window again. Well, luckily, it's good for the best because I was reloading the editor. So I disabled the extension that shows the syntax highlighting here. So you see now how all that's yellow. So now if I add this here, there we go. So now style lint has no idea about it. And if we do npm run style lint, This style has a problem. It has 2 semicolons, but you're going to see either an error or you're going to see nothing. Yeah, so it matched no files. So 2 issues with that. First off, it's only scanning the SCSS files. We need to fix that because we don't want to scan those anymore. Now we want to scan the TSX files because all of our styled components are going to be JSX and all of our JSX is going to be in TSX files. So all we have to do is go to our styleint rules and essentially change this to TSX. So when we run the styleint command, we want to check TSX. And we also need to do that down here, I believe. Possibly not. Oh, right. Here we need to change. We want lint-staged to trigger for TSX here. So for TSX, it's going to trigger styleint. So that's going to also check our lint-staged, and it's going to fix this command. So now when we run this command, it's probably still going to say it found nothing. Oh, no, okay. It found matching TSX files, but it didn't find any styles worth arguing about, even though it's broken here. So now what I'm going to do is, in my example here, I'm going to bring that back, that extension I had, the VS Code styled components. I'm going to re-enable that and see if, okay, cool, it works instantly. So one cool thing now the coloring's back, and now it's showing me the error. That's helpful, but I think it's just doing that because of the extension. If we were to do a scan with styleint, the scan and the styleint command line interface tool is still not going to find it, except it did. How does me installing an extension fix it? That's interesting. It's interesting that VS Code, for some reason, seems to work with that. I'm not happy with that solution because that assumes that everyone using my project is going to have this extension. So we're going to try to find a different solution by using the preprocessor that they recommend, because it's a good recommendation, honestly. So let's go back to it here, and let's do what it's suggesting. It's suggesting installing this preprocessor. Let's do that. So we click on it here, and we see here styleint processor styled components. And you see that it allows you to do that, to do what we're already doing here without that extension. But let's pretend that that extension doesn't exist. So here's the processor here, and it also has a config command that it wants to run, and that's something it mentions here, to disable styleint rules that clash with styled components. That's fair. So let's install these things, because these all seem valuable. I don't like that install command, though, so let's fix that command slightly. Save dev's fine. Yes, I want this one. Yes, I want that one. I do not need the recommended. As we know, the recommended aren't even the best ones. Standard are better than recommended, oddly enough. Okay, so we're going to install those preprocessors. The preprocessor and the extended rules, I believe. And while we're doing that, we're going to double check again the messaging here as far as how to set it up. Yeah, it's exactly how I expected. So we need to add another extension here in our config for styled lint, which is right here. So we add yet another extension for styled components. And we also need to add this fancy little processor. So we're going to add, and I'm going to do it alphabetically. So P comes after E, and we get rid of that trailing comma. So now we have our processor as well. So now, I mean, from a test point of view, this is a little bit, it's still going to show the same thing it showed last time, unfortunately. So yeah, let's again test this by disabling this. I have to reload the code editor quickly. So now, remember last time when this syntax was like this, it wasn't showing the lint error in the command line either. So we're going to see if that's changed. So now it should still pick it up, even without that extension. And it does. Okay, great. So that's much better. So we'll put the extension back on because I like my syntax highlighting. And now we can see it here, which is very helpful, the error. Nice. But now we also have it in the command line, which is important. And we also have it in our pre-lint hooks. So now if we run styleint, we fix that error. Ideally, it shouldn't find any issues. Okay, good. So are there any other steps to the styleint aspect? We got our highlighting. Our testing. Yes. So this is an interesting thing, but here's where I'd like... Oh, we haven't gotten to the theming yet. The themes. Yes, yes, yes. So I want to add the theme. Should we add it now? Yeah, let's just add it with styled components. Daniel just put a message here. I think the name template string is actually ending up JS behind the scenes, maybe. Yeah, I guess it must be. But it's odd that installing that VS Code extension allowed the CLI command to find the error, but without that VS Code extension, the CLI command didn't seem to find the error. That's an odd one, but maybe it makes sense. Maybe VS Code extensions do that kind of thing as well. So I want to add theming now, just because it's kind of part of the original demo. So let's go back to that example that we found. This is the with styled components example, and we see that they used a theme. So let's copy their theme. It's a simple theme. And let's go back to the code, and let's bring in that theme, and that goes in our app file actually, because that's something we want to, the theming happens at kind of the root. Not at the root, yeah, not at the document root, but at the app root. So we're going to put our theme here. Eventually we're going to put this in a folder. We're going to organize this somehow. I'm still kind of trying to figure out the best way to organize this, because I've looked at it. It was okay with that trailing comma too. I need to tighten up these ESLint rules a bit. Yeah, why was the trailing comma allowed too? Another ESLint rule it seems to be totally fine with. Because I've even told Prettier, I'm pretty solid on that rule. Trailing comma, don't do that. Maybe we also need the ESLint rule, perhaps. So let's do that. Trailing comma, ESLint rule. Comma dangle, right? That's what they call it. So we're gonna say comma dangle. It's gonna error. Never. What does that mean? Never disallow trailing commas. Yeah, I want to disallow them. Yeah. So this is another rule, unfortunately, that I have to add explicitly for now. And I'm gonna put these together. That's a comma dangle. I'm not gonna put them together. I'm just being explicit with these because these are my preferences. I want the semis and I want comma dangle. I thought that would be part of Prettier, but let's just enforce it with ESLint as well. So if I do that, I should now get the error. Yeah, okay, good. I want to error about that comma dangle. So it's good that it's doing that. So we got our theme saved here. And if we go back to that piece of the code, what else was it? So there's a theme provider here that it puts into the component. So let's see. Right now we don't have that. So let's do just like that. And now it wants to do the theme provider. We already know that that's part of the styled component, so we can just add that here, I believe. Yeah, okay, that's correct. Oh, I got 2 new lines here. I don't like that. I think Prettier probably would have fixed that, but let's just fix it now. Okay, so the theme provider worked. Was that it? Let's double check if there was anything more to that. So no, there wasn't. So now we have a primary color in our theme. Now we need to use that in our theme somewhere. So if we go back, if we check their hello world example, we see that they did use that. So let's copy that little piece there. So their title component has a theme. If we look at our title component, we don't have a theme yet. But it's also an H1. We didn't have a color. Well, let's take their color. We want a color. Let's keep our hello world font size to, actually, let's use theirs, 50 pixels, sure. Let's center it. I liked it centered. And then here's the little theming aspect, and this is a really cool part of styled components, is that the theme is accessible through this this function, this arrow function. And you can see here themes, colors, primary, and that matches here with the object itself, colors, primary. So it's able, any component within this provider can access the themes and do things like this. So we're going to get rid of that other title there. Actually, we're going to change the color now to be blue. And we're going to use the code version of blue. There we go. So that it's not complaining. And it's complaining about the sort. Oh, looks like I have color twice. Oh, right. Colors from the primary. Oh, so silly of me. Okay. So put color here anyways. We can't have 2 colors. But, okay. So color is being set from the theme. That's exactly the way I want it. So it's going to look like blue. So hopefully we've set up a theme now. Let's try that. npm run test. Not test, sorry. npm run dev. So we're going to see if we get any errors here. What have we done? We had the global theme. We got the theme. That's the main thing we've added. So there we go. We see in our hello world, it's worked. Now we got the bigger font size. We got the blue text, and the blue text is the theme part. So if I were to go into my theme here and change this to, say, pink. And why is it doing that? So we do pink, and then I want to use the color form of it. And what's it complaining about? Private identifiers are not allowed outside classes. I think this needs to be within strings. Yeah, okay. So there's some differences with stuff. Is that correct? How was it before? Let me just double check. Yeah, it has to be within a string. So there's some things I'm gonna have to get used to with styled components. I'm not used to that. So let's save it and see if it changes pink. So it changed pink. So we're using styled components. We're using themes. We're done with CSS files. Linting works. Let's check linting again here. npm run style lint. Not that we've really changed anything worth giving an error about. So there we go. So we have even more set up now. And if we double check yet again to make sure we're actually done here. So we're at the point, we're not completely done, but we're at the point where I want to make a point. So let's say we got styled components, right? We got it done. We want to commit it. Let's review our commits here. And my point will come after we push our commit. So let's start looking at our commit. So we got our Babel file. Well, what have we added here? We've added the plugin styled components, and we want them to be pure, and we want to do server-side rendering. We got our we added comma dangle. Okay, so that's another one I want to do separately here. Added comma, it's explicitly added comma dangle rule for now, ... Again, both these rules should be working with prettier properly, but they're not. So I need to try to find the correct order so that they're not fighting each other and that I don't have to re-specify rules. So we're going to do that for now, though. So I only staged that one change, so it's just pushing that one ESLint change. And I'm going to push that and just get that out to the server. And we're going to start reviewing these files again. So we reviewed Babel. The stylelint file, right? I had to add that the extends the component rules. So we don't want the rules that are against styled components to be triggered on stylelint. And we also want the processor so that it can properly look at styled components within JSX. We got the JSON file, the package JSON file, in which we've updated the way stylelint runs in two places, here and here. We want to target the TSX files and not the SCSS files. We've also installed styled components as a dependency. We got our types for it. We got our Babel type. We got our config settings here. And nothing is making me think this needs to be a dependency. So I'm going to try to move this to dev dependencies, and we're going to see what happens. I'm going to say npm I save dev. So you just essentially pretend run and reinstall it, but with save dev, and it just moves it from a dependency to a dev dependency. Because my thinking is that you don't need it, but maybe it needs to send a polyfill to the front end, so it needs to be a dependency. I don't know. So let's try to do npm run dev and see if it has any complaints with that. And if it does, we'll just move it back. So I'm not seeing any complaints through the compilation. Did hello world re-render? I think it did. Let's just do a reload here. Yeah, so hello world still re-rendering. I can still change the color. Let's change the color of the theme one more time. What's a cool color? Neon green? Is that a color? Is it even a color? No. Green is. Okay. So we got green. And again, it needs to be in quotes. So change it one more time just to make sure. Okay, so that is working. So great. So in my package file, I didn't need to add any dependencies. So I just got rid of Sass in the end is all I did. I got rid of Sass. Let me move this out of the way, guys. What else? And what did I add? So I've added, where's the thing to size this differently? I've lost my scroll bar here. There we go. Added Babel, added styled components, added the stylelint stuff. Boom, that one's done. So in the app, I've moved the global theme to here. Why is it complaining about that? Now it's saying it's extraneous? Oh, okay. So it's complaining. So it probably is supposed to be a dev dependency. If ESLint says so, I'm not going to fight with it. So let's just move that back once again here. So we're moving that back to being a dependency and not a dev dependency because perhaps it does need to be there. ESLint seems to think it does. So it's running through it, and then it's going to stop complaining about this. So if we go back to our package file, we see that now... oh, okay, it doesn't move it. Oh, okay, maybe I have to be explicitly doing -- save now. Good to know. I'm going to have a sip of water while it's moving it there. I could physically just move it in the file, but sometimes I feel like that causes errors. If I change the file and then an npm command changes it later. Okay, I'm just going to explicitly move it because it's actually not moving. So let's put this back here. This should be there, actually. And that will stop that error that we saw. So that's error stopped. So getting back to what we changed in app, all we did is we removed the global style being imported that way, and we've imported it this way. And we've added a theme provider in which we have a theme that only has one thing in it, which is a primary color. The document we've had to change a bit too. We've added the server style sheets because we need to do server-side rendering. We've added this essentially boilerplate, but it's a pretty minimal amount of code that was needed to add. Pretty clear. And in the index, we've changed from an H1 to a title styled component that also has a theme. Great. And we've deleted the global CSS file, SCSS file. So that's a lot we've changed to get styled components working. And I think we're ready to commit them. So added styled components support. I'll try to spell it correctly. And we push that. So it's going to do some linting. It's going to do pretty. It's going to clean it up. We're going to see if it finds any bugs. So it found something. I got a pop-up, guys. I'm going to press show, and let's see what happened. So autofix is incompatible with processors and will be disabled. Are you sure you need a processor? Okay, so this is something I found out about recently, and I forgot to update. But yeah, basically, we can't do the fix command anymore, and that's unfortunate. But as long as we have extensions kind of monitoring things, and we're going to get an error, it's just that silent auto fixing won't occur. So it's not such a big deal. So basically, we just have to go into our lint-staged, and we have to remove the fix part of the command because we don't want to fix. Oh, we need to unstage this file so we can change it here. So we change those settings there, like so, and then we stage it again. And let's try again. So now we're not going to try to auto fix the stylint issues, but still, if they happen, it's still going to stop someone from doing a commit. But let's check. If there aren't any, there we go. It did the commit. So here's where we got a good example. So I'm going to do a push, and I don't know if you guys have guessed it yet, but there's going to be an error, I say. And we're going to get to see it here in our code, in our tests, in our CI pipeline. So we go to our branch here. Actually, we don't need to. Let's check our actions. And we see it's running the test right now. It's running for the added styled components support. We can see it's running the test. It's doing the setup. It's installing the modules. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't jump to it again. Darn it. I need some kind of thing that tells me. There's a few times where I haven't shown you guys, but rest assured, I just opened the project, went to actions as we've done, and I saw that there was a running job. I opened the job, and I see that it's our commit that we pushed. So typically, you would expect, hey, I didn't change anything about hello world. There shouldn't be any errors. That's what you would hope, right? And we're trying right now, and we'll see if that's the case. And while it's doing that, while it's running that test, I'm just going to double check here if we had any other things to mention with that. I don't think we do, so we have some discussion about how to fix this test once we see that it's failing. And there we go. We see a lot of gibberish, and we got an X. So good, kind of. Basically, let's see what the error is. So it's pretty nice error, I think. Error, uncaught, type error, cannot read property primary of undefined. So the property primary was undefined. Where is primary used? And we'll quickly find out. We can search within the code, primary, and we can see it's used in 2 places. So it's probably not the definition of the theme that's the problem. It's probably the index page. And it probably said that in the error. I'm just being a little facetious here. Yeah, obviously it's the index test, so it's testing the index page. So basically what it's saying here is it doesn't have the theme because in our test, we're loading the index component without ever wrapping it in that theme provider. So the easiest fix is essentially just to wrap it in the theme provider. And maybe in the future I might do an addendum where we talk about some other solutions, because there is a way to do it where you kind of wrap the render command in a theme provider, and then everything you render also gets the theme. And that is the ideal approach, but I've had a lot of trouble with that. And for now, we only have one component, so let's not fight with it for now. But at some point, it will get redundant, or it will get a little bit tedious and non-dry, wet, let's say. Do not repeat yourself, you know. It's going to get a bit repetitive at some point if we're always adding the theme provider. But for now, let's just add it because that's clearly what the error is. It's saying. So we're just going to look at the example here of where we used it in the app. And we're going to copy this code. And where do we need it to be? We need it to be in the test. So the test is here. Right now, we're just rendering the index page. All we have to do is wrap it in a theme provider first. So we're going to put the index page here. Get our formatting right, and then we need to import the theme provider because it's not currently imported. So we'll just import it here. Like so. We don't need this. That was not part of that. So now we've imported the theme provider. And as you see there, now it's saying, hey, I don't know about this theme. Now, that's the trickier part. That's where we need to decide where we're going to put the theme in the future. For now, what I'm going to do, and it's a little bit weird. I was thinking of exporting it, but let's just make this a JSON file for now and call it the default theme. So what we're going to do is we're gonna make our own best practice. I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but I'm going to make a themes folder, and inside of it, I'm going to make one called default.json. And in default.json, I'm going to paste our code. And because it's a JSON structure now, we're going to need these quotes. We got to be very explicit with that. And they want double quotes, so we'll go double quotes. So for our theme, yeah, it's unfortunate because doing it this way, we actually lose our syntax highlighting. This probably isn't our long-term approach for how we're going to manage the theme. But for now, let's just put it there. And I need to go back to the index then, and I need to go back to the app, and I need to import that default theme. So we're going to say import. How do we import JSON? I think we just do it like that. Default theme from themes default.json. And default theme is what we're going to put here for now. So we don't need this code here. And now we have a way to access the default theme in two places. Let's first make sure that actually works. So our theme should still work. Our text should still be green. What was the error I got with autofix? Daniel's asking the error I got with autofix. It said that it said that stylint doesn't work with processors, so it couldn't autofix stylint. It was an issue I've gotten before. We can kind of look into it too here. If you go stylint, processors, autofix, and we can see a few people have had this issue before. And I kind of went through a few rabbit holes, but in the end, it seemed like nobody really there was no solution. I think there's a larger task where people are working on that, but it hasn't been solved yet. And it's not detrimental to us getting bad code slipped in. It just doesn't allow auto-fixing in that one case until we have a solution. That could be another addendum for another day if we ever figure out how to get autofix working with styled components with stylint. So our Hello World app still worked. So our default theme concept is good of exporting that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that exact same default theme and we're going to use that in our test. So we got our default theme here, and that's the theme we're going to use here in our test. And other than that, it's pretty much done. So instead of committing the code, this time we're going to run the test locally to make sure that we've actually fixed it. So we're doing the npm t command, npm test, and we're going to see if now the test is fixed. And now it is. Great. So now it's properly rendering hello world and properly finds the theme the way we would expect. And just to make sure that that is working, we can break the test again. We can do our goodbye world test here and run it again, and it's going to give us an error about the text. Now, if we changed our theme color, that's not going to make the test fail because they're both using the default theme. Okay, so yeah, that makes it fail. Switch it back to hello. We got a success. And so yeah, we fixed the test, and we've done it by essentially wrapping our test components in the theme provider. And that's something we wouldn't have caught without this test. We wouldn't have known necessarily that test wasn't working. So yeah, we've extracted the theme out into its own default theme, and that's all we've essentially needed to do for that. Now we can say we've fixed the failing test, or let's say added theme to theme provider to fix test. Added theme provider to fix test. Yeah, that looks good enough. We'll just say theme space provider. Call it what it is. So we'll commit that. It's going to check it for any linting problems. Hopefully there shouldn't be any. And there we go, and we push that. And ideally, if we switch back to our code here, we switch to our actions, as soon as it's pushed, so you see that test failed, and I see it's pushed now. So there we go, we got a new one, added theme provider to fix test. And ideally, we should see that this fixed our test. And now we have a solid test that way. And we're getting near the 3-hour mark, so I'm hoping that my live stream doesn't freeze again, but who's to say? Who's to say? So I'm just gonna see what else we could talk about here. It looks like I don't know if we're gonna get too far into the other stuff today. It ended up taking the full 3 hours for all this, but let's recap what we've installed so far and all the extra stuff we've managed to add. So we've managed to add some more rules to ESLint and StyleLint. We've got our Husky and lint-staged for doing pre-commits. We've added our Jest testing. We've added it to the CI. We've done some code checking to clean up some of our HTML stuff. We've decided not to use Storybook. And we've added styled components, the support for styled components. And if you look here, our test passed. So now we have passing tests too. We got green tests again. So now we've got a pretty tight little Hello World app at this point. And basically anything else we do from this point forward is going to be specific to the project, the X project, the operating system. So if you just wanted to stop the streams here and just use what I have, you've got a great skeleton app that's like a Next.js plus type of thing that you can do a lot with. And as far as what kind of things, what kind of things to talk about next, I think we're going to have to wrap up the stream this time. I don't think we got into too much state management context, I don't think, unfortunately. But we're already at the 3-hour mark. It's a boiler room in my office here, so I think that my computer might have even overheated perhaps earlier when OBS froze. It's hard to say. But yeah, let's talk about what we're going to talk about at the next stream then, because that's when we're really going to get into the meat of the project. We're done with setup finally. We're done. So let's move this over to the next project, next stream, sorry, which is going to be next Saturday, same time, hopefully without the freezing. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the process manager. That's going to be the main thing. That's my idea for the process manager is essentially it's a component loader. And everything else is going to be a component and nothing's going to be hard-coded this time. Because last time I had some stuff hard-coded, like the desktop icons and they were all components still, but they weren't loaded in like a startup fashion. And I want it to be more of a startup type of thing this time. So what we're going to use is context probably. And we're going to talk more about why we're not using Redux and why we're using context probably in the next stream. But context is a way of having kind of a global state. They would say global props or a way not to need prop drilling, that kind of thing. And they would say, hey, if you want to do global state, that's when you want to do Redux. But I've been using context as kind of a global state, and it's been working great. So we're probably going to use that. And then as soon as we have our process manager, our component loader, we're going to start moving on to making components. And I think the first few that we're going to need is process loading. Well, yeah, we're going to need a component. We're going to need the component to load the processes after the context, sorry. So the context is for keeping track of the processes. Then we need to make a component to load components, essentially, which will be the process loader. And then we can start making components like the background / wallpaper, the icons, the taskbar. Those are the kind of things that are going to get put into like a startup array. And those are going to get loaded after the process manager starts up and the process loading begins. So that's my idea for the next stream, and that's when we're gonna get into the meat and potatoes of context, of components, and of trying to understand how we're gonna make the project. Now that we have this extremely tight base, we have a Next.js project, we got Webpack, we got styled components, we have Jest testing that runs in the CI. We've got all of our HTML cleaned up. We're passing the W3C tests. We're passing all the Lighthouse tests. We got the pre-commits. We got Prettier. We got TypeScript. We got editor config. We almost have everything. If we don't have something, please leave me a comment, and we'll make another stream to add it. And at the same time, now's a great time to mention. Please leave any comments that you want. Constructive criticism is ideal, but I'll take any kind of criticism you got. please subscribe to my channel. I've got a lot more videos coming. They're not gonna all freeze like this. I got a lot of pre-made videos I'm gonna start making, like my how I became a developer video that I have. I'm gonna start doing some basic videos to kind of trying to get people up to speed on how to use a lot of these tools and to understand why we did the things we did here. It's gonna be more of an introductory videos, courses type of thing. It'll be another playlist. But yeah, just please stay tuned. Thank you for all the people that stayed. Daniel, maybe I have a few other people. Really appreciated. It's tough doing these streams and talking for 3 hours and stuff, and I appreciate that you guys stuck with me. I hope you guys learned something about setting up Next.js, and I hope you guys feel that we have a really solid base to build upon for the next streams. Because I plan to do 20, 30, 40 of these streams, you know? I mean, if it's once every week, there are 52 weeks in a year, we could at least do 50 of them. We could have a whole year of doing these, you know? And I really have fun doing them. I don't have fun when they freeze. That part sucks, but I have fun doing them. I'm really happy that you guys came along on the ride, and I think we'll end this one a few minutes early of 3 hours because I think we've discussed everything we want to discuss. So thank you guys for tuning in, and yeah, that's it for today. So goodbye. Please subscribe. Hit the bell icon if you want to get notified. That's it. Goodbye.